On the first day of the new month, Madame Zhang wanted to go to the temple to offer incense, so Wenyang pleaded with Mu Linghao. Mu Linghao cared little about Madame Zhang's wishes, but he nodded and took hold of Wenyang's hand. Your mother and the others may go, but you need not. Wenyang smiled faintly. Of course, young master. The knee guard I am making for you is not yet finished. Mu Linghao kissed her cheek, then asked, Are you truly not going with me to Yuzhou? Wenyang shook her head. I must still oversee my younger brother's studies. The journey there and back takes many days. It is better I stay and await your return. After saying this, she curtsied. There is something I wish to ask, young master. Could you find a tutor for my younger brother, someone to teach him daily in the outer court? Mu Linghao's expression darkened. I wonder, do other concubines also speak of their family every day as you do? Wenyang forced a small laugh, slipped her slender arm around him, and whispered sweetly, I have only this one brother, naturally I must care for him. I am deeply grateful for your great kindness, and will devote myself wholly to serving you. The kindness of a beauty is the hardest to resist. Mu Linghao's heart wavered, and he bent down to kiss her deeply. The next morning, after sending Mu Linghao off, Wenyang sneezed several times. Chun Chan asked, Did my lady catch a chill? Shall I fetch a doctor? Wenyang shook her head. It's nothing. I have been like this since childhood when I catch a bit of wind. Please have someone make me a bowl of ginger tea. Once I drink it and rest, I will be fine. Shortly after, Chun Chan brought the ginger tea. Wenyang drank it and sighed. I fear I cannot go see off my mother and brother. Sister, could you have a maid deliver this food box to my brother? Inside the food box were all kinds of snacks. Chun Chan nodded, tucked in Wenyang's quilt, and left. When Xianji learned his sister could not come, he lowered his head with a sigh. But upon opening the box and seeing the treats, he broke into a smile. Madame Zhang urged him onto the carriage. As the carriage rattled out of the governor's mansion, she let out a breath of relief. Then she quickly lifted the seatboard and whispered, Come out now and take a breath. From beneath the seat crawled a figure Wenyang herself, dressed in a servant boy's clothing. She had hidden there with the aid of her time-freezing technique. Fortunately, she was slim, otherwise, the cramped space could never have concealed her. Madame Zhang hastily pulled her out, while Wenyang gritted her teeth and wriggled free with a loud thud. What's that noise? The driver asked. Madame Zhang turned pale, then quickly shouted, Xianji. If you keep jumping about in the carriage, I'll have you get down. The driver chuckled and said nothing more. Inside, the three of them pressed hands to their pounding hearts, exhaling in relief. Madame Zhang's legs nearly gave way beneath her. A short while later, the carriage left the city. Xianji cried out, My stomach hurts. I need the toilet. Bear it. You are always troublesome, scolded Madame Zhang. The driver laughed. Madame Tao, don't scold the young master. Children are like that. I'll stop the cart. He pulled the reins, and the carriage halted by the roadside. Just as he turned his head, a sharp prick struck his neck, and darkness closed in. Wenyang withdrew her needle. She and Madame Zhang dragged the unconscious driver behind a tree, then mounted the driver's bench. With a flick of the whip, Wenyang drove the carriage onward. Madame Zhang peered out the curtain. Where are we going? Wenyang sighed. I must return to the county. But first I'll take you beyond the Qi Prince's reach. So she drove east along the Han River. 2 days later, they arrived at Shunchang City. To avoid suspicion, Madame Zhang dressed as a man, while Xianji was disguised as a little girl. The boy pouted the whole time, thoroughly displeased. They lodged at a grand inn. Wenyang then set out to rent a small house where her mother and brother could stay. Madame Zhang fretted, Don't go back to the county. I fear that Prince's son will seize you again. Wenyang comforted her, The Qi Prince's forces have not yet taken Yuzhou. The county is still safe. I left some things there, I must retrieve them. Madame Zhang, knowing her daughter's resolve, could only sigh. Wang Yang put on a bamboo hat and went out. She found a broker woman and quickly rented a cheap, secluded courtyard house. Then she returned to the inn. Just as she entered, she heard the inn boy greet someone obsequiously, "Isn't this young Master Cui? Please, come in." A man alighted from a carriage. At once the innkeeper bustled out to welcome him. "Young Master Cui, it has been so long. What an honor to have you here today." The man smiled. "Spare the formality. I will stay in my usual room. Is it available?" Hearing the familiar voice, Wang Yang's heart jolted. Peeking out, she saw what was none other than Cui Yanan's elder brother, Cui Jinghe. The innkeeper beamed. "Available, available. That room is always reserved for you." He moved to lead Cui Jinghe upstairs. "Young Master Cui," Wang Yang suddenly called, stepping out from behind a pillar. Cui Jinghe paused, puzzled. "And you are?" "Young Master Cui, do you not remember me? I am Tao Zhuxuan, brother of Tao Wenyang." In men's garb, she did not know how else to explain, so she used her younger brother's name. Cui Jinghe blinked, then smiled warmly. "So you are Miss Tao's brother. How is your sister?" "My own younger sister said you had returned to the village." "Young Master Cui, might I borrow a moment to speak in private?" Wenyang asked. Cui Jinghe had long admired Wenyang. Hearing this request in her brother's name, how could he refuse? He led her into his room. Once inside, Wenyang removed her hat and false mustache. Cui Jinghe gasped. You. Wenyang bowed. "I greet you, young Master Cui. For fear of enemies watching, I had to disguise myself." "Enemies? No wonder my sister said she could not find you at home." Wenyang sighed softly. "I live with only my mother and brother. To make ends meet is hard enough, and now villains pursue us. I know not how we are to survive." Her brows drew together like mist, her once bright eyes dimmed with helplessness and sorrow. Cui Jinghe's heart surged with pity and righteous indignation. "Miss Tao, do not fear. My Cui family holds some standing in the county. Even the prefect is acquainted with us. Tell me, who are these villains? This need not trouble young Master Cui. If they cannot find us, they will leave the county on their own. It's just that I have stored some fragrant rice and am eager to sell it. I wonder if young Master Cui would be willing to take it." Fragrant rice? Cui Jinghe recalled that she had once bought rice from his family's shop. Now, with no rain for so long, the price of fragrant rice had already tripled. His father had not only instructed him to keep acquiring more rice but also not to sell any for the time being. "How much rice do you have?" Cui Jinghe asked. "A few days ago, I spent 700 taels of silver to buy rice. Now, if young master will give me 1,500 taels, it is yours," Wenyang said softly, then sighed. "Only, I am not convenient to return to the county for now." She took out a warehouse key and handed it to him. "Young master may send someone to check the amount. After confirming, then give me the silver." Cui Jinghe was unwilling. No, how could I accept the key to your warehouse without first paying?" Wenyang smiled, bright as rosy clouds at dawn. "I trust young Master Cui." Cui Jinghe felt his heart leap. Thumping his chest, he promised, "Since Miss Tao trusts me so, I will not let you down." He called a servant, sending him back to the county at once to count the rice, then took out 1,000 taels in banknotes and gave them to Wenyang as a deposit. Wenyang declined once or twice, then accepted, agreeing to meet again in 2 days at the same place. Leaving Cui Jinghe's room, she did not fully trust him. She left the inn, circled around, and then quietly returned, telling Madame Zhang everything. At dusk, little Xian went out to ask the waiter for food. Carrying back several meat buns, he hurried to the room. Elder sister," he called as soon as he entered. Wenyang quickly covered his mouth, tapping his forehead. "Keep your voice down." He nodded and whispered, "Just now when I went out, I heard some guests talking. The Prince of Cheese troops have already taken Yuzhou." "What?" Wang Yang's heart shook. If that was the case, then Cui Jing, his servant, who went back to check the rice, would inevitably attract Mu Linghao's attention. She thought quickly. Mother, pack up. We must leave the inn now. But where to? It's already dark, and the city gates are closed. We cannot leave the city, Madame Zhang said anxiously. I have rented a small courtyard. We can hide there for tonight. Tomorrow at first light, we will leave the city, Wang Yang replied. The three of them wasted no time. They slipped downstairs, got into their cart, and drove to the rented courtyard, where they passed the night. At dawn, Wang Yang drove straight toward the city gate. Before leaving, she bought dried food and water skins. Madame Zhang looked back at the courtyard they had just rented and sighed. We only just rented that house, and now we abandon it. Such a waste of silver. How will we live in the future? Wang Yang comforted her. Do not worry, mother. I will not let you suffer. Yesterday I exchanged the rice for some silver. With this as our capital, we can live well wherever we go. Saying this, she urged the cart on, not stopping until they reached the riverbank. There she rented a boat and headed south for Suzhou. That place was warm all year round and far from the Prince of Qi's power. Wang Yang was sure she could carve out a life there. Meanwhile, Cui Jinghe was still waiting for his servant to return and regretting that he had forgotten to ask where Wang Yang was staying. Thinking of her radiant smile, his heart surged with longing. He pondered, though her family background was lowly, both his mother and grandmother were fond of her. If he begged earnestly, perhaps he could truly marry her. As he dreamed, suddenly screams erupted from the inn's hall. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. With a crash, his door was kicked open. A richly dressed young man entered, flanked by guards. Handsome in appearance but radiating killing intent, his hawk-like eyes fixed on Cui Jinghe. Where is she? Who? Cui Jinghe was startled, his voice trembling. Who are you? What do you want in broad daylight? The man was Mu Linghao. The day Wang Yang escaped, he had received word, but with Yuzhou on the brink of capture, he could not be distracted. His heart had been searing with anxiety, but his face had remained calm. Once Yuzhou was taken, he ordered men to search for Wang Yang. By chance, they caught Cui's servant who had gone to check the rice. The servant, bloodied all over, was thrown at Cui Jinghe's feet like a dead dog. Mu Linghao's voice was colder than ice. I'll ask you again. Where is she? Tu don't know. Seeing the tortured servant, Cui Jinghe turned pale. Summoning courage, he stammered, Do you know who I am? My Cui family has ties with the prefect? Mu Linghao sneered as if hearing a joke. The guard Zhang Dali glared. Open your eyes. Our young master is of the Prince of Qi's household. Even the prefect must bow and salute him. Cui Jinghe's legs nearly buckled. Three really don't know where Wang Yang is. Before he could finish, Mu Linghao slashed. In the shadowed room, his lips curled with bloodthirsty contempt. And you dare call her by name? Cui Jinghe screamed as one of his arms was cut off. The pain made him faint. Master, another servant of Cui's wailed, kowtowing frantically to Mu Linghao. Spare us, noble sir, spare us. My master truly doesn't know where Lady Tao is. They only agreed to meet here tomorrow to settle the rest of the rice payment. Kill him. Mu Linghao's black eyes narrowed as he bit out the word. No, no, the servant cried, teeth chattering. She also rented a house. Maybe she's there. Last night, he had secretly followed Wang Yang when she slipped out of the inn and discovered the rented courtyard. Mu Linghao ignored Cui Jinghe and stormed off with his guards toward the house. The servant, seeing the devils gone, collapsed limply to the floor. After a while, he came to, crying out for his master and running to fetch a doctor. 10 days later, the boat carrying Wang Yang finally arrived at the pier in Suzhou. When Madame Zhang stepped ashore and lifted her eyes, she could not help but marvel. Indeed, Suzhou was a truly prosperous place. Merchant ships crowded around the docks, strong men unloaded goods, street hawkers cried out their wares, and on both sides shops lined the streets. The bustle of carriages, horses, and pedestrians was overwhelming. In the misty drizzle of Jiangnan, Wang Yang and her family took a carriage into the city. Before long, a young lad from the Tao family came out to the western quarter of Suzhou and bought several acres of barren land. Everyone who heard the news laughed at him, calling him crazy. The land was infertile, not fit for farming, and with so few people around it was useless for trade. Buying it was nothing but throwing silver into the river. But not long after, an official proclamation was posted on the city tower. Suzhou planned to expand the river channel and build a new dock. All at once, the value of land in the west of the city rose tenfold. Wealthy merchants and magnates rushed with silver to buy land, eager to build shops near the new dock. When they inquired further, they discovered that the best plots near the dock had already been purchased by the Tao family's young master. Many schemed to buy the land from him. Even the prefect's wife's family came several times. But he intended to keep the land to build shops for himself. The trouble was, he did not have enough silver, and so he fretted day and night, losing his appetite. After weighing the pros and cons, he sold the best 2 plots at a moderate price to the prefect's wife's family, and used the proceeds to build several shops of his own. The prefect's in-laws were naturally delighted to acquire such prime land at that price, and from then on, the Tao family's young master became a frequent guest in their home. With this connection to the prefect's family, those who once envied and hated him dared no longer act against him. Moreover, the Tao young master was eager to cultivate goodwill, treating others with courtesy and humility. Though dressed in half-worn cloth garments, he was willing to spend silver to aid the old and poor. His reputation in the area quickly became excellent. One day, outside a 2-courtyard residence in the eastern part of the county, the Tao young master jumped down from his carriage and dashed inside. "Mother, is there anything to eat? I'm starving." Servant woman Tian Mama came over, smiling. "The young lady has just returned, she must be thirsty. Madam, boiled red date tea, please drink a bowl first." Young lady? Looking closer, this supposed Tao young master, with skin smooth and delicate, was none other than a beautiful young woman. Indeed, it was Wang Yang. After arriving in Suzhou, she had used knowledge from her previous life to seize the opportunity and buy land in the west of the city ahead of time. She also knew that buying so much land all at once, and its price rising tenfold, would surely attract hostility. So she sold half as gift, half at cost, to the prefect's wife's family, forging ties with the prefect. After that, no one dared easily provoke her. A woman in a plain robe came from the inner room. Zhangshi. She took out a handkerchief and wiped her daughter's sweat. "Look at this sweat, where have you been running wild again?" Wang Yang gulped down the red date tea and laughed. "Why, wasn't it young Master Song inviting me to play polo? They think they can beat me? They're just dreaming." Zhangshi shook her head, tapping her daughter's forehead with a sigh. "You're a girl, always mixing with those young gentlemen, how can that be proper?" Wang Yang sighed softly. "But they keep inviting me to outings. If I always refuse, I'll not only offend them but also raise suspicion." Zhangshi's face clouded with worry. "Alas, what is to be done?" "What is to be done?" Wang Yang reassured her. "Don't worry, mother. I've already thought it through. Of those shops, we'll keep one for a silk embroidery workshop. If I'm running a business, then I'll have a reason to decline the invitations of those young men." Tian Mama tried to comfort her. "Madam, don't fret. The young lady has always been a thoughtful one. She'll know how to handle it." This servant woman had been bought by Wang Yang from a broker. A pitiful soul, she once served in a wealthy household, but when that family fell, she too was sent into exile. For more than 10 years she had been sold from place to place, suffering beatings, curses, and hunger. Only after being bought by Wang Yang did she begin to live a better life. Soon, Tian Mama brought out 3 hot dishes and 2 cold. Wang Yang raised her thumb. "Tian Mama, this cooking is wonderful, so rich in color, fragrance, and taste. Zhangshi also nodded repeatedly. As a farm woman, she had only ever known how to steam bread after working the fields. Never could she have cooked such dishes, even if given money. Wang Yang tried to pull Tian Mama to sit with them at the table, but she refused. Zhangshi said, "Old sister, why such formality? You cooked all this food today. If you don't join us, we won't finish it." Unable to refuse further, Tian Mama brought a small low table and sat beside them, picking a few dishes for herself. Wang Yang let it go. She took out some fruit wine she had bought, poured a cup for Zhangshi and Tian Mama, and the three of them ate and drank together, savoring the delicious meal. A month later, in the west of Suzhou, a signboard bearing the name Tao Embroidery Workshop was hung high. Wang Yang had only intended to open the workshop as a pastime. After all, the rent from the shops alone already brought in considerable income. But to her surprise, once the embroidery workshop opened, customers flocked in continuously. Pleased, she began to think of expanding and hiring more embroiderers. Yusher, the head embroideress, saw business booming and claimed much of the credit for herself. On her own initiative, she brought in several women from her hometown to work as embroiderers, and demanded that Wang Yang give them high wages straight away. Wang Yang frowned at this. "Aunt Yu, high wages can only be given after a trial period. To pay them as masters right from the start, don't you think that breaks proper rules?" "What rules?" Madame Yu sneered, curling her lip. "Aren't rules made by people? They're all my fellow villagers, I know them better than anyone." "Master, just rest assured." Wang Yang felt displeased, but since she was the head embroideress guild herself and respected by the others, she could not afford to offend her lightly. Holding back her irritation, Wang Yang said coolly, "Then let them each make a sample embroidery. If the work is good, I'll give them the higher wages, for your sake." Not wishing to argue further, she turned to leave. Yu spat lightly on the ground, cursing inwardly, "What nonsense. When I was learning embroidery you were still playing in the mud, and now you dare put on airs as an owner." A few days later, Yu's fellow villagers arrived. Wang Yang inspected their embroidery carefully and finally agreed to give them the higher pay. Yu was very dissatisfied. She felt humiliated in front of her own people, her face dark as thunder. "Elder sister Yu, how can your boss be like this? She really doesn't give you any face," one of the women whispered with a sly look. "Humph. I've toiled for this workshop day and night. Even if I've no achievements, I've had my share of hard work. If she treats me without kindness, then don't blame me for being unjust." Grudges festered in Yu's heart, and she began plotting to sell the workshop's client list to rival shops. Another woman chimed in, flattering her, "Don't, elder sister. I heard the shops near the docks all belong to your boss. If you could marry your eldest girl to him, wouldn't the whole workshop fall into your hands?" Yu's eyes lit up. Her daughter, big girl, was good-looking and curvy. Why couldn't she become the master's wife? After some thought, Yu sent word back to the village to summon her daughter. The next day, big girl arrived at the workshop in high spirits. She sat in the front hall, cupping her face in her hands. The moment she saw Wang Yang, her eyes gleamed with infatuation, and she rushed over like a love-struck fool. "Master, you're here." She leaned forward eagerly, almost pressing her body against Wang Yang. A chill shot through Wang Yang, her hair standing on end. She quickly stepped back, wary. "And you are?" "Master, this is my daughter," Yu said with a broad grin. "She's come to learn embroidery here." It's not the owl's hoot you should fear, but the owl's sudden smile, Wang Yang thought grimly. You had shown her nothing but a sour face for days. Why was she so friendly now? Wang Yang forced a laugh, nodded, and strode inside. "Master, you've worked hard. Please have this tea before you go in," big girl cooed, offering a cup while batting her lashes, pushing out her chest as she leaned closer. Startled at the sight of her bosom nearly brushing against her, Wang Yang jumped back as though fleeing plague. Thanks, but I'm not thirsty," she said, rushing inside. "Mother!" Big girl huffed angrily. "This boss is so handsome, why is he such a block of wood? You useless girl." You smacked her. If you can't win him over, I'll send you back to the village to marry a poor farmer and till fields for life. Big girl pouted. With her beauty and fair, plump body, she refused to marry some country bumpkin. Nosh must snare the master. So from then on, she dressed up every day like a peacock, waiting at the workshop just to see Wenyang. Wenyang, annoyed, stopped coming often. Yu, though frustrated, soon realized this gave her more freedom to skim profits. She took bigger kickbacks from suppliers, withheld wages from embroideresses, and strutted about like a tyrant. Rumors of these misdeeds reached Wenyang, but she had new troubles to face. Her beauty was both her fortune and her curse. Even disguised as a young man, her fine features still drew dangerous attention. One day at the horse grounds, she encountered young Master Song with a group of idle science including Wu Biao, the brother-in-law of the Prince of Chu. Wu Biao was tall, burly, and brutish, harboring a scandalous vice. He lusted after both women and men. The moment he saw Wenyang, his eyes fixed on her. Though she wore a plain old tunic and faint stubble shaded her jaw, her tender skin and delicate looks drove him wild with desire. Suzhou was Chu Prince's domain. Though not as militarily strong as other clans, its wealth made him a valuable ally, and all families courted his favor. In Suzhou, none dared cross the prince's kin, least of all Wu Biao. Wenyang, having only just established her footing, wished to avoid trouble. But Wu Biao was shameless. He brazenly led his servants to her home, pounding on the gate. "Who's there?" cried old Madame Tian as she hurried to open it. Wu Biao barged in with his men, shoving her aside so she stumbled against a pillar. "Out of the way, old hag. Call your master here." "The master and mistress are not at home," she stammered. Wu Biao didn't believe her. He ordered a thorough search, but found no one, leaving him seething. Then he thought, perhaps the young master had gone to the workshop. Off he stormed, men in tow. Indeed, Wenyang was at the workshop. Big girl pounced on her like a fly to meat, forcing a cup of tea on her. Wenyang, exasperated, snapped, "Stop clinging. Stand properly and speak." Big girl fluttered her eyes and simpered, "Master, you haven't come for so long. I missed you so much." With a pout she sighed, "This tea is brewed with my heart. If you drink it, I'll be content and stop pestering you." Something about it struck Wenyang as strange. She lifted the cup, but noticing Big Girl's breathless anticipation and glowing eyes, she gave a cold smile and set it down. Just as she opened her mouth, a coarse voice boomed, "Shopkeeper Tao, so you are here." Wu Biao strode in with his men, filling the doorway with bluster. Wenyang's brows knit briefly, but then she smiled, bowed, and said, "Greetings, young Master Wu. Have you come to purchase embroidery?" Wu Biao stared at her with lust, nearly drooling. It had been long since he had seen anyone who stirred him so. His lecherous gaze made Wenyang's skin crawl. Clenching her jaw, she glanced at the tea, then smiled faintly. "It's sweltering today, running about must be tiring. Big girl, bring this tea to young Master Wu, let him cool off." Big girl's heart lurched. No, but Wenyang's sharp glare silenced her. Trembling, she picked up the cup and presented it to Wu Biao. Wu Biao's eyes lingered on her chest a moment, but with his prize before him, he scarcely cared for the busty girl at all. He took the teacup, drained it in one gulp, wiped his mouth, and sneered, "Shopkeeper Tao, your tea is decent, but your temper is really something. I've invited you to drink at my residence several times, yet you've never come." Wenyang pretended to be frightened and quickly bowed. Don't dare, don't dare. I've just been too busy with mundane affairs. Another day I will surely come to your residence to beg a cup of wine." "Why wait? Today is as good as any other. Come back with me now." Wu Biao reached to grab her wrist. Wenyang blocked his hand with a smile. "Today is sweltering. Why doesn't young Master Wu come upstairs with me to enjoy some ice? We can cool off first and then make plans." Wu Biao's eyes lit up green with lust. He nodded eagerly. "Good, good. Shopkeeper Tao, you are truly thoughtful." Wenyang sighed lightly. With so many people blocking the entrance of my embroidery shop, it really affects business. Yes, yes. Wu Biao was already clouded by desire. Whatever Wang Yang said, he followed. He waved his hand at his retainers. You all go back first. They obeyed and left. Wu Biao stepped onto the stairs, but suddenly felt dizzy. He held his forehead and shook his head. Seeing this, Wang Yang thought to herself, so the tea really worked. She steadied him and said, Careful, young Master Wu. Then she told Dinyo, What are you standing there for? Help him along. Dinyo, knowing the drug she had slipped into the tea was taking effect, answered nervously and helped Wu Biao upstairs. Just as they stepped into the room, she felt a sharp pain at the back of her neck and fainted. Wang Yang dragged her onto the bed and laid her beside Wu Biao, sneering coldly. At dawn the next morning, at a pork stall in the market, a man and a woman were found naked, entwined together. The neighbors were instantly in an uproar. Though customs in this dynasty were relatively open, such a disgraceful scene was unheard of. Rotten leaves, sticks, and slop were hurled at them. The pain woke Wu Biao and Dinyo. Their minds were groggy and confused, but before they realized what had happened, they were tied up and thrown into a pig cage. The crowd shouted angrily, demanding they be thrown into the river. Wu Biao panicked. Let me go. I am the brother-in-law of Prince Chu. I spit on you. If you're the prince's brother-in-law, then I must be the emperor's brother-in-law. The crowd roared with laughter, not believing him at all. Humiliated and helpless, Wu Biao was carried like a pig toward the river. Just as they were about to be thrown in, a shout rang out, Stop! It was the prefect. He covered his eyes in disgust at the sight of Wu Biao and Dinyo, and tossed them 2 garments. Prefect, save me! I am Wu Biao, the prince's brother-in-law. Wu Biao cried like a drowning man grabbing at straws. Silence! Stop your nonsense! How could the prince have a brother-in-law like you? The prefect snapped. Then he sternly addressed the crowd, They have indeed broken the law, but you must not administer private punishment. I will handle it according to the law. He signaled, and yamen runners carried them away. When Prince Chu heard the news, he was livid. Wu Biao was not truly a close relative, merely the younger brother of a concubine. Normally, the prince tolerated his arrogance, but this public disgrace was unforgivable. He berated the concubine harshly and ordered her to send her brother away at once. Wu Biao was never again allowed to set foot in Sioux City. If he dared, he would be killed. Terrified, the concubine kowtowed and summoned her family, urging them to take Wu Biao away quickly. Thus, Wang Yang successfully rid herself of Wu Biao, greatly lifting her spirits. But Madame Yu still remained in the embroidery shop, meddling as always. As for Dinyo, she suffered a strange twist of fate. Though she had fainted, she had indeed lain with Wu Biao once. Though he resented her for causing his humiliation, after being expelled from the city he grew lonely. Remembering her allure, he summoned her and indulged with her day and night. Madame Yu had once despised Dinyo for her disgrace, but when she saw that Dinyo had truly latched onto Wu Biao, her arrogance swelled. At the embroidery shop, she became even more overbearing, scolding and beating the seamstresses, deducting wages at will. The cart rattled along, and Wang Yang sat inside dressed as a handsome young scholar, a blue round-collared robe, a square cap on her head, and faint stubble at her lips. Soon the cart reached the bustling docks. This was the busiest hour, with merchants from north and south crowding the streets. Wang Yang stepped down, walking on cobblestones into a row of shops. The third storefront bore a sign, Tao's Embroidery Workshop. Master, you came so early today. On such a hot day, the journey must have been hard. It was a young woman from behind the counter, smiling warmly. Her name was Chunmei, a pupil trained by Madame Yu. Her embroidery skills were no less than her teacher's, which made Madame Yu jealous. It has been truly hot lately. Wang Yang wiped her sweat. You all work hard. Madame Yu told me this month you'd each receive 1 extra tael of silver in wages. 1 tael? Chunmei's face darkened. She had received her wages yesterday, with no extra tail at all. Had Madame you embezzled it again? Yes. In fact, I said your embroidery is particularly fine. If others get 1 tail extra, you should get 2. 2 tails? Chunmei gasped with delight. But then her expression fell. Not only had she received no extra, Madame Yu had even deducted half a tael from her wages just because a merchant praised her work. Chunmei, what's wrong? You don't look well, Wang Yang asked. Chunmei hesitated, then whispered, Master, we didn't get any extra tael yesterday. What? Impossible. I gave the silver to Madame Yu just yesterday. Wang Yang feigned surprise. She must have taken it again, Chunmei said bitterly. These past 2 months, since you've not often been around, she has been docking our wages. Tears welled up in her eyes. What nonsense are you spouting? A shrill voice cut in. Madame Yu stormed out, slapping Chunmei across the face. You wretched slut. I taught you and raised you, and now you dare slander me before the master? Chunmei's cheek burned red. She clutched her face but bit her lip in defiance. Tu did not lie. Say another word and I'll rip your mouth apart. Madame Yu shrieked like a madwoman. She pulled down a silver hairpin and stabbed at Chunmei's face. Io! Chunmei screamed in pain. At last she couldn't endure any more. She shoved Madame Yu away. You heartless hag. I helped you steal embroidery patterns from the workshop, and not only did you dock my wages, you now attack me? Years of pent-up resentment burst forth. She turned and bowed deeply to Wang Yang. Master, I have wronged you. I obeyed Madame Yu and stole pattern pieces, which she then sold to rival shops. Shut your mouth. Madame Yu roared, rushing over to tear at Chunmei's lips. Shut up, shut up. Madame Yu roared, rushing forward to tear at Chunmei's mouth. Chunmei let out a shrill scream as a long gash was left across her face. Stop. Wang Yang frowned. She swept a glance at the other embroidery girls, who were all frozen stiff with fright. What are you all standing there for? Tie her up. You bastards, let me go. Madame Yu shrieked, thrashing about, but several terrified embroidery girls still went forward to bind her. How could 2 hands resist so many? Within moments, she was trussed up tight. Tao Dalong, what kind of dog bastard are you? How dare you treat me like this? My daughter serves the prince's young brother-in-law, a noble lady. Madame Yu cursed furiously. Wang Yang sneered coldly and slapped her hard across the face, making stars dance in her vision. Picking up the floor mop, she shoved it into Madame Yu's mouth. Go fetch the constables, tell them Madame Yu injured people with a weapon inside the embroidery workshop. The embroidery girls had never seen their master so harsh before. Frightened speechless, the one closest to the door stammered an and rushed out to summon the constables. Before long, several constables entered and, like catching a chick, carried Madame Yu away. Wang Yang then sent for a doctor to tend to Chunmei's wound. Chunmei sobbed, my face won't be ruined, will it? What should I do? How much silver will it cost to see the doctor? Wang Yang sighed. Don't worry. Since this happened in my embroidery workshop, I will find a way to cover your medical expenses. Hearing this, Chunmei wept with gratitude, bowing repeatedly to her mistress. She admitted that she had once believed Madame Yu's slander and wronged her mistress, but from now on she would repay her with all her heart. From then on, Chunmei devoted herself wholeheartedly to the embroidery workshop and became utterly loyal to Wang Yang. Madame Yu, meanwhile, was thrown into prison. She shouted incessantly that she was the mother-in-law of the prince's young brother-in-law and demanded to be released. The jailers ignored her ravings. Annoyed by her noise, they whipped her until she was bruised all over. Only when her family came to take her back did she leave the prison. Once out, she turned in the direction of the embroidery workshop and spat curses. Tao Dalong, just you wait, I won't let you off. That day, Wang Yang left the embroidery workshop intending to stroll near the wharf, seeking new business opportunities. In June, the weather was like a child's face, changing suddenly. Out of nowhere, rain poured down, heavy drops pelting the ground. Pedestrians scattered like startled birds. Wengyang also lifted her skirts and hurried back toward the workshop. Chunmei quickly came forward with a cloth. "Mistress, dry yourself." Wengyang took it, wiped herself, and casually handed it back. But Chunmei stammered, "Mistress, you'd better change clothes." As she spoke, her eyes darted to Wengyang's upper body, her face tinged with embarrassment. Puzzled, Wengyang looked down. Because of the thin summer blouse and the drenching rain, the curves of her chest were plainly visible. She gasped, clutching her arms around herself, and fled upstairs to the resting room. After changing into dry clothes, she felt much more comfortable. Sitting on the Kong bed, she sighed, realizing that her true identity as a woman might no longer be kept secret. Knock, knock, knock. Chunmei tapped on the door. "Mistress, I boiled ginger soup, please drink a bowl." Wengyang responded softly, "Come in." Chunmei entered, offering the soup. She did not leave at once but hesitated, then said, "If not for you tending to my wound without holding a grudge, my face would never have healed so quickly. I'm deeply grateful. I don't know how to repay you. But rest assured, I'll never breathe a word to anyone." Wengyang smiled, grasping Chunmei's hand. "When Madame Yu treated you so badly, yet you still respected her, I knew you were someone who remembered kindness. Hearing you say this now, I feel at ease." Chunmei nodded firmly. "Don't worry, mistress. Not only do I owe you a debt, but as a woman myself, I know how hard it is for us to make our way in the world. To win honor for us women, I would never babble outside and ruin your standing." Wengyang breathed a little easier at this. But neither she nor Chunmei realized that a pair of ears outside the door had heard everything. Little Madame Yu was crouching at the threshold, her jaw nearly dropping to the floor. She never imagined that the capable, brilliant master of the workshop was actually a woman in disguise. She covered her mouth and crept away, then hurried off to Madame Yu's house. Madame Yu was at home, scolding chickens and dogs. Seeing her daughter arrive, she eagerly welcomed her in. But the girl refused to speak directly, so Madame Yu painfully pressed a string of cash into her hands. Beaming, little Madame Yu pocketed the money and poured out everything she had just overheard. Madame Yu's eyes widened in shock, then she burst out laughing. "That woman is far too bold. Just wait till I'll see to it she's ruined and disgraced." After sending off her daughter, Madame Yu left the city and went straight to her elder daughter, Daniu. Hearing the news, Daniu immediately passed it on to Wu Biao. Wu Biao had long suspected that the one who had dumped him and Daniu naked in the marketplace was Wengyang. But he had no proof, and he dared not return to Sioux City to confront her. Cooped up in the backwater countryside, he was going mad with frustration. His jaw muscles twitched as he gave a cold laugh. "Good, excellent. Tao, I'll see you ruined, made into a whore that everyone rides and sleeps with." With that, he took up a brush and wrote a letter, sending it to his old gang of dissolute cronies. Soon, the rumor that Tao Dalong was really a woman spread among the young lords of Sioux City. They even spiced it up with salacious tales, saying Wengyang mixed among men all day and had long since lost her chastity. A few dandies, drinking together, exchanged knowing glances. "Young Master Song, you were always closest to Tao Dalong, didn't you ever catch a whiff of womanly fragrance?" Song, drunk and slurring, boasted, "Of course. When she leaned against me to play polo, her body was soft and fragrant. I almost couldn't resist taking her right then and there." The others roared with laughter, spewing lewd jokes one after another. Wengyang, however, remained completely unaware. She did not yet know that a disaster was quietly brewing. Thanks to the efforts of Wengyang and the embroidery girls, the embroidery workshop's business was flourishing. Counting the silver in her hands, Wengyang grew more and more delighted. She calculated that in another year or so, even if she didn't sell those shops, the money in hand would be enough to buy a salt license. That day, a merchant couple from the north, drawn by her reputation, came to the workshop to select embroidery pieces. After discussing with them briefly, Wang Yang signed the contract and received a deposit. The couple, smiling warmly, invited her to a meal. Wang Yang could hardly refuse. She insisted on being the host instead, to fulfill her duty as a local. She invited the merchant couple to a private room at the most renowned restaurant in Suzhou. Before the food was served, the male merchant said, "Truly, Suzhou deserves its name as a prosperous place. Even the restaurants are so magnificent." He gave a sheepish smile. "Master Tao, don't laugh at me for being unsophisticated. I'd like to wander about the restaurant for a while." "You are too courteous. Please, go ahead." Wang Yang clasped her fists politely. The man left the room, while the woman, being chatty, struck up an easy conversation with Wang Yang about all sorts of things. Before long, the man returned, showering praise on Suzhou and the restaurant. Just then, the waiter came in with wine and dishes. The waiter glanced at the male merchant, then at Wang Yang, before hastily lowering his head. It lasted only an instant, yet Wang Yang's sharp eyes caught it. Her heart gave a jolt. She showed nothing on her face, but unease rippled inside her. She lifted the lid of her teacup, stirred the tea leaves absently, and took a sip. Moments later, a dull pain throbbed in her temples. Wang Yang shook her head. "Master Tao, what's the matter?" asked the woman. "I don't know. Suddenly my head feels dizzy." Wang Yang rubbed at her temples. As soon as she spoke, an eerie silence fell in the room. The woman said nothing. The dizziness grew stronger, and Wang Yang slumped sideways onto the table. "Well, she's out cold. Didn't expect the drug to work so well. But I told the waiter to put it in the wine, not the tea," the man said. "Doesn't matter. As long as she's unconscious. Quick, pull off her coat, let's see if she's man or woman." As the woman reached out and tugged at Wang Yang's collar, Wang Yang's eyes snapped open, a cold gleam flashing within. "Ah!" The woman shrieked in fright. Wang Yang gave a chilling smile. "What are you trying to do?" The man stepped forward grimly. "Behave yourself. We only want to find out if you're male or female." As he reached for her, claw-like, Wang Yang shouted, "Stop." Everything froze. She pulled out long needles and jabbed several points on the couple. "Ah! It hurts," they howled in unison, collapsing to the floor and writhing. It felt as though countless little insects were gnawing at their flesh, leaving them both in agony and unbearable itch, desperate enough to smash their heads against the wall. Wang Yang looked down at them with calm disdain. "How does it feel?" Realizing it was her doing, the couple scrambled up and knelt at her feet, kowtowing furiously. "Spare us, Master Tao. It's unbearable, please forgive us." "Forgiving you is easy," Wang Yang said coldly. "But I want to know who sent you." "It was young Master Song. He gave us 10 taels of silver and told us to do this. We'll never dare again, never." The two sobbed as they tore at their own clothes in torment. Young Master Song? Wang Yang's heart tightened. Could it be that her disguise as a man had been exposed? If Song knew, then all the young gentry of Suzhou might know as well. What should she do? Steadying herself, she pulled out some of little Xian's digestive pills and forced each of them to take one, then pricked them again with her needles. The torment lessened slightly. Wang Yang took out 2 gold ingots, her gaze sharp. "Will you take these or wait for the poison in your bodies to kill you?" Thinking they had indeed been poisoned, the couple kowtowed desperately. They were shrewd enough to spit out, young Master Song was just stirring up trouble. "Master Tao is a man through and through, why else would we need to verify?" Wang Yang smiled faintly and tossed the gold onto them. The couple wasted no time. They rushed to Song and delivered the story she had crafted. Yet Song and his companion still weren't entirely convinced. His gaze glinted coldly at the corners. "Is he really a man?" Yes, yes, the couple swore, banging their heads on the ground. "How could we dare lie to you, young masters? Unless we don't want to live in Suzhou anymore." The other dandies felt deflated. Wu Biao must have bedded one too many market women and lost his wits, To say something so baseless, one of them scoffed, being on poor terms with Wu Biao. Still, Song stroked his chin, suspicion lingering. His eyes swirled with scheming thought she would try again another day. Wang Yang returned home, her mind unsettled. For a woman to carve out a place in a man's world of business was harder than hard. If she wished to gain a firm foothold and build wealth, she must continue her disguise as a man. Half a month later, scandal erupted. Master Tao of the embroidery workshop was rumored to be having an affair with widow Yao. People were shocked. How could such a handsome young master fancy a mere widow? Yao, her belly swollen, stormed into the Tao household, demanding that Madame Zhang allow her into the family. Madame Zhang was aghast. She struck Tao Dalong, Wang Yang, harshly and barred Yao from crossing the threshold. Where did this shameless hussy come from? Claiming the child in her belly belongs to my son? Madame Zhang spat. Bah! Who knows how many beds you've crawled into, and now you dare to extort us. Mortified, Tao Dalong, Wang Yang, tugged at Madame Zhang's sleeve. Mother, let it go. Let it go? Madame Zhang snapped, glaring at her. The widow burst into tears. Your whole family bullies a weak woman like me. Aren't you afraid of heaven's wrath? She then cursed loudly at the gate. Tao Dalong, you coward. Doing it but not owning up. What kind of man are you? You're nothing but a turtle hiding in its shell. Wang Yang's cheeks burned with shame. She wished she could sink into the ground. When young Master Song and his friends heard, they laughed uproariously, debating whether widows or courtesans were more amusing. At last, they dropped their suspicions of Wang Yang. Later that night, Wang Yang slipped quietly into Widow Yao's house. It turned out Widow Yao was Chuanmei's cousin. After her husband's death, she had kept her widowhood for a few years, until she fell for a traveling peddler and became pregnant. But the peddler was too poor to support her and the child. Wang Yang gave them money. Grateful, Widow Yao bowed deeply to her. She and the peddler left Suzhou, returning to the countryside to buy farmland. Because of this incident, Wu Biao was mocked mercilessly by his drinking and gambling friends in Sioux City. Enraged, he slapped Dinyo several times. Wretched woman! Your mother's nonsense has already brought shame, and now you want to drag me down and make me lose face as well? Dinyo trembled with fear. Knowing that Wu Biao had already grown sick of her, she clung tightly to his leg, refusing to let go no matter what. Wu Biao kicked her to the ground. Shameless thing! If it weren't for you seducing me, how would I have lost so much face in Sioux City? You're a cursed jinx, a filthy whore. Anyone who gets close to you is doomed. He cursed and then summoned 2 servants, ordering them to drag her out and sell her off. Dinyo cried and struggled, but her mouth was stuffed, and she was pulled away. Thus, Yusher's scheming brought ruin upon her own daughter. Retribution came swiftly indeed. Meanwhile, Wang Yang, intent on purchasing a salt license, prepared heavy gifts and went to the prefect's residence. The gatekeeper saw her arrive and immediately cupped his fists with a smile. Ah, shopkeeper Tao, it's been a long time. Wang Yang returned the greeting. Many thanks, brother. She slipped him a silver ingot. I'd like an audience with the prefect. Could I trouble you to announce me? The gatekeeper weighed the silver discreetly and smiled even more warmly. Please wait a moment, shopkeeper. I'll report right away. With that, he dashed off like the wind. In this manner, Wang Yang scattered silver all along her path until she finally stepped into the outer study of the prefect's residence. Your humble servant greets the prefect. Wang Yang bowed deeply. So it's shopkeeper Tao, the prefect said with a smile. This is no courtroom, no need for such formality. Please, sit. Thank you, my lord. She bowed again before sitting. A young maid brought 2 bowls of tea and then withdrew. Wang Yang produced a small lacquered box. Your lordship's honored mother has a birthday coming soon. I wasn't sure what would be appropriate, so I prepared a humble gift to show my respect. The prefect raised his eyelids, looking troubled. What are you doing, now? Wang Yang opened the box. Inside, golden ingots gleamed brilliantly. Be rough estimate, at least 100 or 200 taels worth. My lord, I am newly settled in Sioux City. Thanks to your fair governance, merchants like myself can conduct business in peace. I have always been deeply grateful, and have long wished to find a way to express my thanks. She bent low, speaking with utmost sincerity. The prefect chuckled. Shopkeeper Tao, you're too polite. If you ever encounter difficulties, just tell me. As a magistrate, helping the people solve their troubles is my duty. Wei Yang nodded repeatedly. Seeing the atmosphere had been suitably warmed, she carefully guided the topic to the salt licenses, testing the waters in hopes of securing one. This small gift is nothing. If your lordship could see fit to help me in this matter, I will prepare an even greater offering. At this, the prefect sighed. In past years, it would not have been difficult. But just recently, the prince issued an order this year, salt licenses are suspended. He smiled again. Still, I'll keep your request in mind. Should licenses ever be auctioned again, you'll be the first I notify. Wei Yang kept her face beaming, but inwardly cursed, bah. Nothing but empty promises. This time, I've taken a loss. Leaving the prefect's residence, she sat in her carriage and thought deeply. Since salt licenses couldn't be obtained, becoming a salt merchant was impossible. Then what other trade could bring great profit? Shopkeeper, we've reached the market, the driver called from outside. Wei Yang alighted. Park the carriage at the street corner and rest. Pick me up here in half an hour. The driver acknowledged and drove the carriage away. The marketplace was bustling with hawkers and a sea of moving heads, cries of vendors rising one after another. Wei Yang stopped at a fish stall, intending to buy a few live fish to make soup for Xian. The fishmonger greeted eagerly, "Good day, customer. We've just received fine fresh cod, boneless and tender, truly delicious. Would you like a few?" Just 100 miles east of Sioux City lay the sea. Beyond that, there were canals suitable for transport, so sea fish occasionally appeared for sale. But because of the journey's delay, by the time the fish reached Sioux City, their price was already 2 or 3 times higher than at the coast. Wei Yang's eyes suddenly lit up as she held the cod. If sea fish brought such a markup when transported inland, what about imported goods? Spices, carpets, exotic jewels. How much profit could they yield if brought to Sioux City for sale? Sioux City was full of wealthy merchants and noble families. If they fancied something rare, spending a fortune in a single throw was hardly unusual. Wei Yang bought several cod, then went to the street corner to find her driver and returned home. Mother, cod is perfect for making soup for Xian. She pushed the door open and handed the fish to Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang smiled, taking them. This fish is boneless and fresh, very fine indeed. But it's not cheap. She weighed them in her hands and said again, "Why don't you stay for lunch? I'll have Mama Tian prepare it for you, and we'll save some for Xian to eat after school this evening." Wei Yang shook her head with a sigh. I'd love to, but too many merchants have placed embroidery orders recently. I must watch over the workshop. I won't be home these few days. With that, she bid her farewell and left. Her carriage carried her to the embroidery workshop. After giving instructions to Chunmei about the work, she prepared to head toward the docks. Owner, Chunmei called, closing the doors and windows before speaking softly. Even though you've disguised yourself, you are still a woman. To go so far away alone, I fear it may not be safe. It's no problem. By waterway, it takes less than a day to reach Haicheng. True enough, Chunmei replied, but still, it's always good to have someone to look after you. She pointed westward. There's a neighbor's girl from my mother's family. Since childhood she's eaten more than most, and her father, who was a bodyguard, taught her some boxing and kicking techniques. She's sturdier than most men. Now that her father has passed away, her family has no income. Her mother asked me to find her some work. I thought she could follow you, not only to serve you but also to protect you. Hearing this, Wei Yang nodded. Bring her here and let me see her first. A short while later, Chunmei brought the girl. This servant Tsuetsue greets the mistress. A tall, strapping girl came in to pay her respects. Just as Chunmei had said, she was broad-shouldered, tall, and strong, her build entirely at odds with her delicate name. Wenyang suppressed a smile, gave a light nod, and decided to keep Tsuetsue. She also summoned Tsuetsue's mother and signed a death contract. When Tsuetsue's mother heard she would be paid 3 taels of silver per month, she grinned from ear to ear, bowing repeatedly to Wenyang and urging her daughter to serve her mistress well. Thus Wenyang took Tsuetsue with her, boarded a boat heading east, and after a day arrived at Haicheng. The morning sea was tranquil, glittering under the sunlight, dazzlingly beautiful. Seagulls soared freely across the azure sky. "Mistress, the air by the sea is so salty." Tsuetsue, hopping off the carriage, ran about like an excited child. She had never seen the sea before, and at the sight of its vast, boundless majesty, she could not contain her joy. The fresh, damp, salty breeze blew against them, lifting Wenyang's spirits as well. She stood at the shore and took a deep, satisfying breath. After enjoying a hearty seafood meal with Tsuetsue, she inquired after the local merchant ships and soon sought one out. The ship loomed 2 zhang high and 3 zhang wide, its towering sails unfurled with a loud snap in the wind. When Wenyang stated her purpose, the boatman led her to see the captain. The captain, hearing she wished to buy goods, brightened at once and courteously invited them into the cabin. As soon as the door opened, a cloud of dust billowed out, stinging their eyes and choking their throats until they coughed and covered their mouths. Inside, goods of every kind were piled haphazardly on the shelves. Wenyang frowned in disappointment. "Forgive me for the mess," the captain explained. "The ship only returned a few days ago, so we've not yet had time to sort everything." He pointed as he spoke, "Here's Korean ginseng, there are Persian spices, and those are gems from India." As he talked, he busied himself with a feather duster, brushing at the dust. With a sigh he added, "Don't laugh at me, good merchant. Business is hard these days, what with the world in chaos. But back in the day, my goods could all be sold as far as the capital." Wenyang nodded faintly, stepping forward to pick up a pearl. It was perfectly round, gleaming with a golden luster, far from ordinary. "This is a South Sea golden pearl, the rarest and most valuable of all," the captain boasted. But Wenyang set the pearl down with a sigh. "The goods are fine indeed, but with the world as it is, your prices must be steep. Even if I buy them, I'll not be able to sell them off. Best if you show me some sea fish instead." "Sea fish? My ship is a merchant vessel, not a fishing boat." "Ah? My apologies then, for troubling you. We'll be on our way." She cupped her hands politely and turned to leave with Tsuetsue. Don't go. Prices can be negotiated, easily negotiated." The captain, seeing her about to depart, hurried after her. Feigning reluctance, Wenyang returned. After some haggling, she finally selected a fair number of goods. On the way back, Tsuetsue looked several times as if she wished to speak. Sitting in the carriage, Wenyang cast her a glance. "If you have something to say, then say it. Didn't mistress come just to buy imported goods? Why did you suddenly ask about sea fish?" Wenyang smiled knowingly. "Didn't you see all that dust in the hold? Those goods have been sitting unsold for a long time. Naturally, I had to press the price down." Tsuetsue's mouth dropped open like a duck egg. She nodded repeatedly and gave a thumbs up. "Mistress is truly brilliant. Enough with the flattery. Didn't your father have a senior disciple here who opened a security bureau? Take me to see them." The next day, Wenyang hired 2 guards from the security bureau and found a cargo ship to carry the selected goods back to Sucheng. She first stored them behind her embroidery workshop, then refurbished the shop next door into a lavishly decorated storefront. On opening day, she sent out invitations and gathered many of the city's wealthy merchants. Everyone marveled at the exotic imports. For days, the shop was crowded with customers. Wenyang earned a fortune. Studying her clientele, she saw that most were young ladies and wealthy wives. So she spent heavily to invite an old matron who had once served in the palace. This woman, formerly responsible for the beauty and skincare of imperial consorts, now offered treatments at the shop and even taught court etiquette to the ladies. Soon, the imported goods firm became the favorite gathering place of Suqing's wealthy women. To receive an invitation to view its latest products was considered a mark of honor. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a whole year had passed. Wenyang had firmly planted her roots in Sioux City. Whether it was the embroidery workshop or the imported goods shop, customers poured in daily, and business flourished. She returned the rented house and bought a 2-courtyard residence with a small garden. She also bought a few maids and servants to attend to Madame Zhang and little Xian. Madame Zhang often sighed that she had never enjoyed much blessing in her life, and yet now she was able to live well thanks to her daughter. At the same time, she constantly fretted about her daughter's long-term disguise as a man. How could she ever get married in the future? Wenyang soothed her with words, but in her heart she thought that it would be best never to marry. Once Xian grew up to hold the household, she would mount a horse and travel across the famous mountains and rivers of the world. Indeed, she had quite the talent for business. As time went on, she made adjustments to her imported goods shop. No longer did she simply sell rare foreign items, instead, she catered specifically to the tastes of wealthy merchants' wives and young ladies. Whatever they liked, Wenyang would provide: beauty and health remedies, fragrant spices, exquisite and precious imported jewelry, hair ornaments, fabrics, everything imaginable. Disguised as a young gentleman, she looked strikingly handsome, refined, and courteous, so she was much favored by the customers. Even when others grew envious and opened competing imported goods shops, she remained the leading figure in the trade. Seeing her own business thrive, Wenyang couldn't help but hatch new ambitions. She wanted to expand into the capital. Though the times were unsettled, with noble clans waging wars against each other, the capital was still relatively safe. More importantly, it was home to aristocratic families with centuries of accumulated wealth, who spent money as freely as water. Wenyang mentioned her idea to Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang was taken aback and sighed. "I wonder how your father is now." Xian has yet to even meet his own father. Wenyang quickly changed the subject. "Mother, the prefect is hosting a polo match. Don't wait for me to eat." Saying so, she walked out. Cui Cui, seeing her leave, curtsied to Madame Zhang, then followed like a tail. Madame Zhang called after her, but Cui Cui didn't stop at all. Madame Zhang chided softly, "That child." Old Madame Tian brought over some freshly made pastries. "Madam, please have some." Madame Zhang sighed deeply. Wenyang is good in every way, except that she is too hard-hearted toward her father. Old Madame Tian also sighed, then spoke bluntly, "Madam, our young lady is already kind enough. With a father like that, who wouldn't harden their heart? Truly, you cannot blame her." Madame Zhang opened her mouth, but in the end said nothing. Wenyang rode her horse to the polo gathering. She didn't know how to play polo, but by now she was an excellent rider. The spring wind brushed her cheeks, and suddenly she recalled the first time she had ever ridden a horse when she had been held in someone's arms, seated in front of him. Would he have gone mad with rage upon discovering her escape? Just imagining Mu Linghao's refined and handsome features contorted with fury, she found it faintly amusing. A small smile tugged at her lips. When she arrived outside the polo grounds, Wenyang handed her horse over to a servant. "You don't need to follow me in. Cui Cui will accompany me." The servant twitched his lips. Other young gentlemen always had their servants by their side, but his duty was constantly stolen away by that hulking maid. He cast Cui Cui a sidelong glance, but she, oblivious, trailed happily after her mistress inside. Under the azure sky, sunlight slanted across the field, illuminating the vast meadow. The grass gleamed like emerald waves. Two teams of riders galloped furiously, chasing after the brightly colored polo ball. The crowd surrounded the field in thick layers, their cheers and shouts rolling like thunder. Wenyang tiptoed to see, but the crowd was too dense. She couldn't catch a glimpse of the game. Master, look, there's an archery range over there." Cui Cui, having recently taken up archery, was itching to shoot. She pointed excitedly. Wangyang turned to look. That area was much less crowded. Come, let's go shoot some arrows. She led Cui Cui over. Cui Cui, childlike, shot 2 arrows before being distracted by butterflies. Master, I'll catch one and be right back, she called, running off. Wangyang knocked an arrow, aiming at the target. Go ahead, she murmured. She drew the bowstring with effort, muscles taut, teeth clenched, but when she released, her arm stung painfully and the arrow drooped weakly to the ground halfway. Disheartened, Wangyang sighed. Ha ha ha. Laughter erupted behind her. She turned and saw young Master Song with 2 other dandies standing a few paces away. She ignored them and bent her head, studying the bow again. Song had once sought to invest in her shop, but she had politely refused him. He had borne a grudge ever since. Curling his lip in disdain, he jeered, look at that Master Tao, all delicate like a woman. Can't even draw a bow. Exactly. This bow isn't even heavy. Any man in Sioux City could pull it with ease. Remember Wu Biao once said he was actually a woman? Looks like maybe it wasn't nonsense after all. That's right. Sure, they say he once got that young widow pregnant, but after that, who's ever heard of him with another woman? The 3 muttered together. Song narrowed his eyes, then beckoned a servant and whispered something in his ear. Wangyang tried the bow again and again, but her slender arms simply couldn't manage it. At last she sighed in defeat, set the bow aside, and turned to leave. Suddenly, a basin of water splashed straight into her. Ow, my butt, the servant carrying it cried, falling to the ground, the water soaking Wangyang's thin spring shirt. She gasped at the cold, and when she looked up, she saw the 3 young men's wolf-like eyes fixed hungrily upon her. Luckily, she had learned her lesson last time and had bound her chest tightly. Yet under their penetrating stares, it felt as though they could see right through the cloth. Goosebumps prickled all over her body. Well, Master Tao, what's that under your clothes? Don't tell me you're binding your chest like a woman? Song smirked, having glimpsed the bandages, and advanced with unrestrained mockery. Flushed with shame, Wangyang instinctively hunched her shoulders and stepped back. The 3 of them closed in like wolves. A single word stop was already forming on her lips. Suddenly, a cloak draped over her from head to toe, and a warm body pressed against her from behind, enclosing her in an embrace. Which one should I kill? A cold, clear voice whispered in her ear as he raised the bow in her stead. In an instant, Wangyang froze as though struck by lightning. Mu Linghao. Never had she imagined she would see him again in this lifetime. In Mu Linghao's eyes, icy cruelty gleamed. He regarded the 3 as mere prey, chilling all who met his gaze. He let out a faint snort. With a sharp whistle, the arrow flew. Ah! Young Master Song let out a miserable scream, his left arm struck, blood flowing profusely. Master! Master! The servants cried out and rushed over. Song Gongzi's face was pale as death, his brows shot up, and his eyes seemed to spit fire. What are you all standing there for? Seize him at once. At his command, the servants turned, viciously charging forward. Mu Linghao sneered with disdain, shielding Wangyang behind him as his hand touched the sword at his waist. Stop, stop. The prefect came hurrying over in a panic. All of you, stop at once. He took one look at Song Gongzi's wounded arm and exclaimed, this. How did this happen? Then he glared at the servants. Why aren't you helping your master down to have his wound treated? Uncle-in-law. Song Gongzi howled, he dared shoot and wound me, and you don't seize him at once? The prefect stamped his foot. Silence. Taking a deep breath, he forced his expression to calm before saying, this is nothing but a flood rushing into the Dragon King's temple family fighting without recognizing family. He is my nephew, your cousin. Brother scuffle, it's normal to get a bump or 2. How could you take it seriously? Song Gongzi bit down hard on his jaw, furious, but his family's affairs in Sioux City still depended heavily on the prefect's support. He could only snort like an enraged bull, gnashing his teeth as he spat. "Let's go." The prefect let out a sigh of relief, quickly hurrying over. "Nephew. That man is my elder sister's son, my nephew as well. Please, forgive and overlook." Mu Linghao had already restrained his icy aura, his lips carrying a spring-like smile. With a polite bow, he said, "Uncle is too kind. It was my fault for losing control. I shall come to your residence another day to apologize properly." "Think nothing of it, think nothing of it." After a round of polite exchanges, the prefect prepared to leave. Wang Yang, seeing the prefect about to depart, twitched her lips and tiptoed to make her own escape. "Where do you think you're going, Master Tao?" Mu Linghao suddenly grabbed the hood of her cloak and yanked her back, his tone almost grinding through his teeth. Wang Yang stumbled, nearly falling on her backside. Her lips trembled as she forced a laugh. "Many thanks to the young master for saving me today. I'll call on you another day to properly thank you." Mu Linghao gave a cold snort. "Call on me? To call on which gate, the city gate you plan to flee through?" Without another word, he dragged her along by the hood of her cloak, like one would a squawking chick. "Release my master." A shout rang out, and Cui Cui darted forward like lightning, leaping to deliver a palm strike at Mu Linghao. He sidestepped easily. His personal guards, however, dropped down like shadows, and within moments had subdued Cui Cui. Don't. Wang Yang grabbed Mu Linghao's arm, pleading, "Please don't hurt her." Her soft voice carried a pitiful note. But Mu Linghao wasn't swayed in the slightest. He seized her wrist in return, yanking her along. "Master! Master!" Cui Cui shouted desperately behind. Wang Yang twisted her head back, calling out to reassure her, "Don't be afraid." "Ahow!" Before she could finish, a sharp pain shot through her wrist. "Could you please be a little gentler?" Her eyes shimmered with tears, glistening like water. Mu Linghao's face remained dark and unyielding. He ignored her entirely, dragging her out of the polo grounds and tossing her into the carriage. The carriage rolled forward slowly, but inside the air was chilling. Mu Linghao sat like an ice mountain, eyes closed, yet his entire being radiated a ruthless, piercing aura. Wang Yang shrank into a corner, not daring to make a sound. She stole a glance at him, swallowed nervously, but found herself completely helpless. She even wondered if he was fated to restrain her. Why else would her time-freezing technique be useless against him? After an unknown stretch of time, the carriage finally came to a halt. "Young master, Tao the shopkeeper's residence has been reached," a guard announced outside. "Residence?" Wang Yang froze. How did they know where she lived? Mu Linghao lifted his eyelids, his dark gaze like ice-locked water. "Get out." Yes. Wang Yang breathed in relief, clutching her robe as she prepared to climb down when he suddenly yanked her back. She fell into his chest. His tall figure loomed above, backlit by the light, engulfing her in shadow. The oppressive weight nearly suffocated her, she could even hear the grinding of his back molars as he clenched his jaw. Trembling, she looked fragile despite her male disguise, weak, delicate, like she could break with the slightest touch. Mu Linghao drew in a deep breath, forcing his heaving chest to still, then flung her aside. "Get out!" Wang Yang scrambled down, rolling and crawling in her haste. The carriage rolled onward again. Master! Cui Cui was also thrown off a horse, staggering to her side. "Master, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." "You?" "I'm fine too." Who were those people, so overbearing? Cui Cui spat angrily in the direction of the departing carriage. Wang Yang said nothing, only stared thoughtfully at the fading silhouette. She truly couldn't figure out what Mu Linghao wanted. Hate her? No, not quite. At worst, she was his plaything for amusement. Irritated by her? Annoyed? That seemed more likely. He, a dignified young lord of Prince Chi's manor, had been toyed with by her. It was natural for him to be furious. But what was she to do now? She was no longer the girl with nothing to lose, who could simply run at a whim. She had businesses in Sioux City she couldn't abandon overnight. Even if she couldn't bear to give up what she had built with so much effort. That night, unable to sleep from vexation, Wayne Yang rose early the next morning and hurried to the embroidery workshop. Spring May was now capable of running the shop independently and was deeply loyal to her. Wayne Yang entrusted her with a number of tasks. Spring May, surprised, asked, "Mistress, why do you say these things? Are you planning to leave town?" Wayne Yang smiled faintly. "Not right now. But if someday I don't come by for a while, just follow what I told you today." Spring May felt a wave of unease, about to ask more, when Wayne Yang reassured her, "Don't worry. I only want to take Mother and my younger brother back to our hometown for a visit." Spring May's worry turned into relief. "As long as it's nothing serious." "Don't worry, mistress, I'll watch the workshop carefully." After settling the embroidery shop, Wayne Yang went to the trading house. But staring at it, her heart grew heavy again. Who could she trust with this business? That night, under a moon white as frost, Mu Linghao sat alone by the window. His half-lidded eyes gleamed, his profile sharp as a blade. "From tomorrow, stop reporting her whereabouts to me. Don't shadow her for protection either." His voice was cold and unfeeling in the night. The guard obeyed and withdrew. Mu Linghao raised his cup, downing it in one gulp. His cheeks were already flushed, his pupils tinged with drunkenness. He laughed bitterly at himself. Ever since discovering her in Sioux City, his moods had been unsettled. The moment he heard she was in trouble at the polo field, he had rushed there without a thought. And yet when she saw him, she wasn't shaken in the least. She carried on calmly, tending to her businesses as if he were nothing. Truly, she was a cold and ruthless woman. Wayne Yang busied herself with planning her business, all the while on edge, afraid that Mu Linghao would show up to cause trouble. Fortunately, several days passed with no sign of him, as though their last encounter had been nothing more than a fleeting dream. That day, the prefect sent a message to Wayne Yang, informing her that the bidding for salt permits was about to begin. On hearing this, she was overwhelmed with excitement. To become a salt merchant wealthy beyond measure had always been her dream. Following the servant to the yamen, she entered through the main gate and passed the screen wall, and in the covered corridor she happened to encounter the prefect's son, Shangguan Hongwen. Shangguan Hongwen was dressed in an ice blue, narrow-sleeved robe. His hair was not tied with a crown but simply fastened with a jade pin. He had the gentle, refined air of a scholar. "Brother Tao," Shangguan Hongwen cupped his hands in greeting, calling to her warmly. Because Wayne Yang's maternal family was well acquainted with his, she had a decent relationship with him. Smiling like a spring breeze, she returned the gesture. "I greet you, young Master Shangguan. It has been too long since we last met. That day, I heard your stories of exotic goods from overseas. They were truly fascinating. When might I hear more?" To promote her imported goods, Wayne Yang often told tales of foreign marvels in lively teahouses and taverns. Though the prefect forced his son to study the classics, Shangguan Hongwen had little interest in the rigid eight-legged essays, preferring instead travel notes and tales of the strange. "You are too kind, young master. Rather than setting a date, why not seize the moment? Once I finish with the salt permits, I shall host a small banquet today itself." "Ha ha ha, excellent." As the two conversed merrily, Wayne Yang suddenly felt an unfriendly gaze upon her. She turned sharply, and her breath caught Mu Linghao was approaching. Sunlight filtered through the eaves, falling upon his face, making his fair features gleam like polished jade. His straight nose, perfectly shaped lips, one had to admit he was strikingly handsome. Most of all, those eyes, cold, deep as a lake, impossible not to fall into once they looked your way. "Cousin," Shangguan Hongwen called out warmly when he saw him. "Cousin?" Wayne Yang's eyes widened in shock. Wasn't Mu Linghao the second legitimate son of Prince Qi's household? His surname was Muho. Could he be Shangguan Hongwen's cousin? Mu Linghao glanced at Shangguan Hongwen and gave a faint an acknowledgement. Behind him followed his retainer, Zhang Dali, dressed in plain clothes, showing none of the bearing of a commander of princely guards, just like the attendant of a wealthy young master. Zhang Dali chuckled and said respectfully, "The prefect has entrusted the salt permit bidding to my lord. My lord has come to oversee the matter." At this, Shangguan Hongwen grabbed Wang Yang's wrist with delight. "Brother Tao, isn't this perfect? The bidding is handled by my cousin." Mu Linghao's brows knitted, a chill flashing in his eyes. Shangguan Hongwen added, "Cousin, this is my good friend, Master Tao. He is also well connected to my maternal family. I hope, when you preside over the bidding, you might look after him." Mu Linghao shot a dagger-like glance at Wang Yang, gave a cold snort, and strode past them into the reception hall. "Ah, that's just how he is," Shangguan Hongwen said awkwardly, smiling at Wang Yang. "My cousin has a foul temper, always stern and unsmiling. But he is capable. He's already serving as sub-prefect under my father." Wang Yang smiled politely, saying nothing, though unease gnawed at her. What was Mu Linghao's purpose in becoming sub-prefect of Su City? If he presided over this salt permit auction, then she would have no chance of success. And who knew how long she might have to wait for another opportunity? Dejection weighed on her, each step suddenly heavy. When they entered the reception hall, many merchants were already seated in 2 rows of armchairs. After exchanging greetings with acquaintances, Wang Yang took the last seat on the left side. Soon Zhang Dali entered first, announcing, "The sub-prefect arrives." At once, the hall fell silent. Mu Linghao strode in, took his seat at the central table. Though not dressed in official robes, he exuded authority. His hair was tied neatly with a white jade crown, his presence commanding. "Greetings to the sub-prefect." The merchants rose and bowed deeply. Mu Linghao lifted his hand slightly. "Please be seated." Then to Zhang Dali, "Explain the rules." Zhang Dali bowed. "Yes, my lord." Turning to the merchants, he said, "For fairness, this salt permit bidding will have 2 rounds of written offers. In each round, the 5 lowest bids will be eliminated. The 3 highest bidders in the final round will obtain permits." Servants distributed paper and brushes. The merchants hesitated briefly, then wrote down their prices and placed them on the table. As Zhang Dali read the offers aloud, Wang Yang's fists clenched on the armrests, her heart pounding. Only when she heard her name was not among those eliminated did she finally breathe a shallow sigh of relief. From his lofty seat, Mu Linghao observed everything, the corner of his lips twisting into a sneer. When the first round ended, the merchants were dismissed, told to return 10 days later for the second round. Entering the hall, many had been cheerful, leaving it, they were crestfallen. The rules were simply too ruthless. Bid low, and you got nothing. Bid high, and you bled silver. How could they not be heartsick? Outside the yamen, Merchant Qian called to Wang Yang. "Master Tao, would you join me for a drink?" Wang Yang hesitated, then nodded. In a private room at Qian's tavern, he sighed. "This new sub-prefect is formidable. Today's highest bid was 20,000 taels already. Who knows how high the price will climb in 10 days. After a pause, he cupped his hands. "I wish to propose cooperation with you. If our 2 houses join forces, our silver combined will surely secure a permit. And since the price is so outrageous, sharing the risk would benefit us both." Wang Yang considered for a moment and nodded. "Master Qian speaks reason. But this is no small matter. Allow me to think on it and give you my answer later." Of course, of course." After some polite conversation, Wang Yang took her leave. As her carriage rolled forward, she sat inside with a furrowed brow. Mu Linghao was truly a calamity. This bidding method filled the government's coffers, but it ruined the merchants. Even if she somehow scraped together enough silver, could she still profit afterward? With a vexed sigh, she clenched her fists and finally made up her mind. She lifted the curtain and called to the driver, "Return to the yamen." The driver acknowledged, turned the carriage around. At the gate, Wang Yang alighted and told the gatekeeper, "Please inform the sub-prefect. I have urgent business with him." The gatekeeper nodded, about to go inside, when Mu Linghao himself appeared with Zhang Dali. She quickly stepped forward, bowing. "My lord, the manager of Tao's embroidery house seeks an audience." Mu Linghao's cold gaze swept over, then just as quickly turned away, his face expressionless. He said with a frosty tone, "Is this official someone that any stray cat or dog can demand to meet?" The doorkeeper was startled by his imposing authority. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, yes, I'll drive him away at once." He rushed over in a few steps and shouted, "State judge has come out, idle people leave at once." Then he winked at Wei Yang, lowering his voice, "Master Tao, you'd better leave quickly, don't make things difficult for me." As he spoke, Mu Linghao had already walked out. Carrying the aura of one in high office, he went straight toward the carriage. Wei Yang could not allow him to just leave like that. She turned swiftly and ran forward, "Honorable judge, this humble woman has urgent matters to report." Mu Linghao lowered his eyelids and looked down at her from above, his voice cold, "Who are you, that you dare to block this official's way? Hey, how can you behave like this? Move aside quickly." The doorkeeper, watching the judge's face, stepped forward to pull Wei Yang away. Just as his hand was about to touch her, Mu Linghao's expression darkened. He barked, "Stand down." The doorkeeper shrank back in fright, bowing repeatedly, "Yes, yes." Mu Linghao cast Wei Yang a glance, then climbed into the carriage without another word. Seeing this, Wei Yang bit her lip and, steeling herself, darted into the carriage as well. The carriage soon rolled forward. Inside, the air seemed to congeal, suffocating. Wei Yang took a deep breath. Since young master has come to Suzhou under a false name, might this humble woman lend a hand? Mu Linghao lounged lazily against the seat, his deep eyes regarding her as he sneered, "You? Do you really think that earning a few taels makes you capable of anything?" Wei Yang clenched her fists secretly. "I've been here for 2 or 3 years and built some connections. Even if I can't aid you directly, I can at least help conceal your identity." His face darkened. "What is your true intent in coming here?" He paused, lips curving like a knife. "Let me guess, you wish to use my identity to threaten me, don't you?" Wei Yang's heart trembled violently. Truly worthy of being the future emperor who would pacify the realm could see through hearts so easily. But her expression showed nothing. "I only wish to help hide young master's identity. Yet I too am troubled day and night by the matter of salt permits. I beg your assistance." Mu Linghao's fury erupted, his eyes sharp and chilling. "You dare threaten me? Aren't you afraid I'll kill you right now? Dead people keep their mouths shut forever." A chill ran down her spine. But to become the wealthiest of salt merchants was her dream, and she was so close she could not give up. She forced a tinkling laugh. "If I had no confidence, how would I dare step into this carriage? If you kill me, the entire city of Suzhou will at once know that the state judge is the second young master of Prince Qi's household." Her heart pounded so fiercely it felt it might leap from her throat. "What if I kill everyone connected to you? If you all die, who would be left to know? You wouldn't. The matter of salt permits is a trifling thing, not worth you taking such a risk." Her words were so firm that even Mu Linghao felt like applauding. "You are right, I would not kill recklessly in Suzhou. But killing your maternal family, why, that would be like crushing ants." Wei Yang gasped, her face pale. Yet she forced herself to remain calm, bearing a smile. "My mother's family never raised me. If you wish to kill them, then kill them. My aunt and grandmother have always delighted in bullying us. Better if you do." "Is that so?" Mu Linghao's laugh was cold. "Then I won't kill them, I'll just cut off one of their hands each day, letting them bleed out in pain until they die." "You." Wei Yang's lips trembled. She drew a long breath, suppressing her anger, then forced a coy smile. "You frighten me, young master. I was only joking just now, it shouldn't be taken seriously. Prince Qi's household is known for benevolence, would never slaughter its subjects at whim." Mu Linghao raised an eyebrow, his jaw clenched tight. "Get out." Wei Yang descended from the carriage, then spat toward the receding wheels. To threaten Mu Linghao was like bargaining with a tiger. It was impossible. She had no choice but to rely on Manager Qian. Back home, she carefully checked all the ledgers. The ready silver amounted to only 17,000 taels. With unwilling sigh, she summoned Manager Qian. After a long discussion, they signed a contract, agreeing to jointly bid for the salt permits in 10 days' time. On the day of the second round of bidding, Wang Yang and Manager Qian pooled their bid, writing down the staggering sum of 30,000 taels. Such a high price indeed won them the permit. Wang Yang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Though expensive and shared, the profit would still be several times, even tenfold. Her spirits lifted, she drank and feasted with the other merchants until she was tipsy, then had Sui escort her home. The next day, after washing up, she carried her banknotes to the yamen. She waited and waited until afternoon, but Manager Qian never came. Master, master. Sui came running breathlessly. Something terrible. Manager Qian has vanished. Vanished? Wang Yang's heart jolted. How could he vanish? Sui panted hard. I went to the tavern to look for him, but it was shut. Then I hurried to his house, but the gates were locked tight from outside. I called for a jest. No one answered. Wang Yang felt as if plunged into an icy abyss, standing frozen and staring blankly. Suddenly she bolted like thunder, racing to Qian's residence. Empty. Truly empty. A heavy lock fastened the gates from outside. Wang Yang's face turned deathly white, her eyes bulging in panic. Like a madwoman, she pounded on the door. Open up. Open the door. Master, don't be like this. Sui was on the verge of tears. Hey, what are you two doing, making such a racket? A neighbor poked his head out. He glanced curiously at Wang Yang, then said, looking for this family? They all left last night. I heard they sold their business and took the silver back to their hometown. Left last night? A setup. A scheme. She had been deceived. Wang Yang collapsed at the doorstep, eyes staring blankly. In 3 days the payment deadline to the authorities would come. If she failed to raise 30,000 taels, she would be imprisoned or exiled. Shaking all over in the carriage, Wang Yang clenched her hands tightly together, muttering to steel herself, as long as she sold the shops within 3 days, she could raise 30,000 taels, obtain the salt permit, and become rich beyond measure. She would not be defeated, never. Wang Yang returned home in a daze and collapsed into the armchair in the study. Her gaze drifted toward the hidden compartment where the property deeds were kept, and her eyes stung with pain. Those deeds were her lifeline, the foundation of her independence. They were earned through countless days and nights of hardship and careful planning. Whenever she felt exhausted or discouraged, just seeing those deeds would restore her strength because with them, she no longer needed to rely on any man, nor be bound as someone's wife or daughter-in-law. She could stand tall and live proudly in this world. Taking a deep breath, she wiped the dampness from her eyes and slowly stepped toward the secret compartment. With clenched teeth, she pulled it open. But at once she gasped, as if doused by a bucket of icy water from head to toe. The compartment was empty. The deeds, where were her deeds? She trembled, her whole body chilled to the bone. Where were they? Where were her deeds? Bursting out of the room, she rushed to the main quarters. Mother, have you seen my property deeds? Zhangshi, sitting uneasily, flinched at her words. Deeds? What deeds? The property deeds. The ones I kept in the secret compartment. Zhangshi's face flushed like a guilty child's. Lowering her head, unable to meet her daughter's eyes, she muttered, "Too. I gave them to your uncle." What? Wang Yang's voice cracked in disbelief. Her face went pale as she stared at her mother. She had only told her about the deeds to ease her mother's worries about the future, never once imagining she'd have to guard against her own. And now her mother had handed them away? Seeing her daughter's reaction, Zhangshi panicked. Don't be upset. Your uncle only borrowed them to use as collateral for a short while. He promised he'll return them in 3 months. 3 months? Wang Yang gave a broken, bitter laugh. Her legs gave way, and she sank against the doorframe. At this point, she couldn't even wait 3 days. If she didn't pay for the salt permit on time, she would be thrown into prison, exiled, stripped of everything, ruined completely. Zhangshi drew in a sharp breath and clutched her daughter in fear. My child, don't frighten your mother like this. Your uncle is my only brother, was in desperate need. I just wanted to help him. He'll repay us, he surely will. Enough. I don't want to hear it. Wang Yang roared, her chest heaving with fury, fear, and despair. Since her rebirth, she had scarcely shed a tear. But now they poured down like a broken dam, blurring her vision. She shoved her mother's hands away, steadied herself on the door, and staggered outside. Wang Yang! Zhangshi called after her, taking 2 steps forward. But this time her daughter did not look back. The wind rose, scattering leaves across the courtyard. Her loose robes billowed in the gusts, making her appear even frilier, her figure lonely and desolate. Watching her retreating back, Zhangshi's heart clenched with pain. She dared not call again, afraid her fragile daughter might shatter at the sound, and only murmured weakly, your uncle will return them. He will. The walk from the main house back to the study was not long, yet it felt endless. Wang Yang slumped into the chair again, staring at the empty compartment with a mocking smile. From Merchant Qian's proposal of partnership, to his sudden disappearance, and now to her mother handing the deeds to her uncle, whose grand scheme was this? Was it Mu Linghao's doing? If it was him, then what did he want? To crush her dignity completely underfoot? Or was he still after nothing but her body? With a long sigh, she ordered her servants to find the residence of the prefectural judge. Not long after, a boy returned with word of Mu Linghao's address. That night, a carriage drew up before his residence. It was a modest 2-courtyard house, the vermilion gates bare of any plaque. The coachman dismounted and addressed the gatekeeper. Brother, please announce us. My mistress, Master Tao, seeks an audience with the judge. The gatekeeper glanced at the carriage hidden in moonlight and smiled. The judge left instructions earlier. If Master Tao comes, there's no need to announce. You may go straight in. At that, a figure alighted from the carriage, cloaked from head to toe, face unseen. The coachman bowed. Master Tao, I'll wait here for you. Only then did the gatekeeper realize it was indeed Master Tao and hurriedly said, this way, please. He led her toward the main hall. Zhang Dali stood waiting outside. He looked up and asked, are you Master Tao? From beneath the hooded cloak came Wang Yang's voice, I am. Please announce me. The master said, if you arrive, you may go in directly. Please. Many thanks. Wang Yang's hand hesitated on the great door before she pushed it open. With a creak, the door was closed behind her. Inside, the main hall glowed dimly with candlelight, empty of people. Drawing a steadying breath, she stepped forward when the sound of footsteps came from the inner chamber. Looking up, she saw Mu Linghao emerge from the side room. He wore a dark silk robe, the collar slightly open, revealing pale skin and a delicate collarbone. His damp hair clung to his forehead, a droplet sliding down his finely sculpted face into the strong plane of his chest. He gazed lightly at Wang Yang. Why have you come? Wang Yang raised her slender hand to untie the cloak's fastening. The cloak slipped gracefully from her shoulders, pooling onto the floor. She was not in men's clothing this time, but wore a water blue smoke-embroidered blouse with a scattered flower-pleated skirt. Her waist was slim as a drawn bow, her shoulders sharp and elegant. Mu Linghao's breath caught for an instant, then he turned his gaze aside and sat down on the couch. Wang Yang glanced at the towel on the low table, stepped lightly forward, and took it in hand. Standing behind him, she said softly, let me dry the water from your hair, young master. A fragrance neither holy orchid nor holy musk drifted into Mu Linghao's nose, making his heartbeat stumble. His breathing grew heavy. He knew he could endure no longer. He had wanted this woman for so long, longer than he had ever desired power, conquest, or any other thing in this world. Wrapping his arm around her slender waist, he pulled her into his lap. Have you decided? Wei-Yang fell onto his legs, feeling as though her waist would snap beneath his grip. His body burned against her, like a volcano ready to erupt at any moment. Was it all you're doing? Wei-Yang's lips curled coldly, her eyes glancing sideways. The warm breath rising from her white neck seeped into his nose, making his voice rough and husky. Yes, it was me. You dared deceive me, and this is only a small punishment. He inhaled deeply, trying to slow the boiling rush of blood in his veins. He longed for her fiercely, but it had to be her willing surrender. His lips brushed, almost carelessly, over the pearl-like lobe of her ear. She shivered. Seeing her reaction, he laughed lowly, speaking with the sweetest voice to deliver the cruelest words. Little Wei-Yang, if you fail to produce 30,000 taels of silver this time, everything you own will be seized, and you will be exiled. Those young lords and rivals you have offended will never spare your mother and brother. Mu Linghao lifted her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. But if you yield to me now, I will grant your every wish. Salt permits you may have as many as you like. Business I will see you wealthier than nations. Revenge I will kill every enemy who ever wronged you. He tempted her like a devil, his pupils black and fathomless, like a vortex ready to swallow her whole and burn her down to ash. Wei-Yang lowered her gaze, her long lashes hiding the chill in her eyes. Mu Linghao's face darkened, thinking she would once again play her clever tricks to refuse him. But suddenly, she raised her head and pressed her tender lips against his. The world exploded around him. Joy surged through his veins like wildfire, his blood roared. He would give her no chance to retreat. Lifting her into his arms, he strode toward the bed. Jade furnace, embroidered quilts, lovers entwined. Fragrant sweat staining the pillows, laughter beneath the curtain's rings. Willow shadows soft, hairpins fallen. If only for one lifetime's wager, let it be today's delight. For Mu Linghao, tasting desire for the first time, and after so many obstacles, there was no question of restraint. No one knew how many times water was brought in. The maids waiting outside leaned against the pillars, half asleep, until a muffled, teasing cry reached their ears. You've had enough. Isn't it ever over? The voice was hoarse, yet tinged with languid sweetness like syrup melting snow, both tender and alluring. Mu Linghao's low, rough murmur coaxed at her ear, even as he pulled her back into his arms, forcing her once again into endless surrender. The next morning, the sky was bright and blue, as clear as polished sapphire. Wei-Yang sat in her bath at her own residence, her whole body aching as though run over by a cart. She stared blankly at the still water before her. Suddenly, a tear fell, splashing into it. She told herself she had only found a pretty young lord to serve her for the night, that once she grew wealthy, she had always planned to keep such men for company. She told herself it was no more than being bitten by a dog after all, it was only flesh. But her heart was hollow with sorrow. Leaning against the tub's edge, she sobbed quietly, her smooth white back marred with bruises that would shame the eyes of anyone who saw. Mu Linghao, however, was true to his word. By noon, servants delivered her property deed and a salt permit. A woman entered, bowing. This slave, Fuqiu, greets my lady. She was a martial maid. The young master has ordered me to serve you henceforth. Wei-Yang's lips curved in a mocking smile. To serve me or to watch me? I dare not. Fuqiu knelt quickly. This slave knows how to make fine pastries, and my martial skills are passable. I only hope to amuse and protect my lady. She hesitated, then lowered her head. I beg my lady to keep me, or else. Or else. She did not finish, but her anxious face made it clear, if Wei-Yang refused, she would suffer greatly upon returning. Wei-Yang smiled faintly. Here, I accept only those loyal to me alone. You were sent by the young master, so naturally, your loyalty belongs to him. You had better go back. He felt as if heaven and earth had exploded around him, an ecstasy that nearly drowned him. His blood roared in every vein. He would not give her a chance to regrethe, scooped her up across his arms and carried her step by step toward the curtained bed. Jade brazier, ice mat, brocade of mandarin ducks, flushed cheeks, fragrant sweat soaking the pillow. Outside, the pulley creaked, brows arched with a smile, startled. Willows cast their hazy shade, hairpins slipped from her temples. One must wager one's whole life in the joy of this very day. Mu Linghao, tasting the ways of men and women for the first time, and after so many twists and turns finally winning her, would hardly let Wei Yang go so easily. No one knew how many times water had been fetched. The maids waiting in the corridor leaned against the pillars and dozed, when inside came the delicate rebuke, "Enough already. Will you never stop?" Her husky voice carried a languid softness, like syrup melting frozen snow, sweet and enticing. Mu Linghao's low, rough voice pressed against her ear, coaxing her, yet still pulling her firmly into his arms, forcing her to sink with him once more into endless depths of passion. At dawn, the sky shone as pure as a sapphire washed clean. Wei Yang returned to her own residence and sat in the bathing tub. Her whole body ached as if run over by a cart. She stared blankly at the calm, rippling water before her. Suddenly, a single tear fell, dropping into the tub. She had comforted herself. It was nothing more than taking a handsome young official to serve her for a night. After all, she had once planned that, when she was rich beyond measure, she would keep a few young men to relieve her loneliness. She told herself it was nothing more than being bitten by a dog after all, it was only flesh. Yet her heart still felt hollow and desolate. She lay across the edge of the tub, sobbing in low bursts. Upon her smooth snowy back, blotches of bruises bloomed, sights that would make any face flush scarlet. Mu Linghao, at least, kept his word. By noon he had someone deliver a salt certificate. "Your servant Fuqiu greets my lady." The one who arrived was a martial maid. The young master ordered this servant to attend upon my lady from now on. Wei Yang's lips curved in a mocking smile. To serve me or to watch me? This servant would not dare. Fuqiu hurriedly knelt. This servant can prepare delicate pastries, and is skilled in martial arts. Staying by your side, I can both entertain you and protect you. She paused, bowing her head low. I beg my lady to keep this servant. Otherwise. She did not finish. Yet from her anxious expression, Wei Yang knew well if she were rejected, she would surely face punishment on return. Wei Yang gave a faint smile. I take only those wholly loyal to me. You were sent by the young master, so naturally your loyalty lies with him. You had better return. Hearing this, Fuqiu hesitated, then solemnly bowed her head to the floor. Since the young master has sent me to serve my lady, from now on I belong to you. I shall be loyal to you, and you alone. Wei Yang replied lightly, if that is so, then stay. My earlier words were but a jest. Why so nervous? I know the young master was your former master, and your loyalty to him is natural. But since you are here, you must also know my rules. In my household, for those disloyal there is only one word, death. Her gaze swept downward, cold and sharp. Perhaps you think that I, a powerless woman with no strength even to truss a chicken, can do nothing to you? Fuqiu shivered. This servant does not dare. Wei Yang's lips curved slightly. All I need do is tell Mu Linghao that you have shown me disrespect, and he will immediately remove you and replace you with someone better and more obedient. As for you. Fuqiu's body trembled. She pressed her forehead firmly against the floor. This servant is willing to follow wherever my lady leads. Wei Yang gave no clear response. She had never expected true allegiance, only a reminder was necessary. Indeed, Fuqiu now carried deep unease, for she knew Wei Yang's words were not empty. For these past years, the second young master had had only Wei Yang as his woman. And Zhang Dali had given special orders. Not only must Wei Yang be protected, but she must also be well attended to. Fuqiu let out a silent sigh. With two masters pulling at her, how was she to serve? Ever since Wei Yang learned that Madame Zhang had given the house deed to her elder brother Zhang Dalong, she had grown cold toward her mother. Although Madame Zhang was the one who had given birth to and raised her, this betrayal had forced Wang Yang to become Mu Linghao's captive plaything. How could she not feel angry and resentful? That day, Madame Zhang carried a tray of fruit toward the study. She lingered at the doorway for a long while before finally pushing the door open. With a fawning smile, she said, "Wang Yang, I've already cut the fruit for you. Come and have some." "Just leave it there," Wang Yang replied faintly without raising her head, her eyes still fixed on the account book in front of her. Seeing her daughter so indifferent, Madame Zhang felt her pride wounded. Her face soured, and though she opened her mouth, wanting to scold, no words came. Biting her lip, she could only turn away, sleeves flicking as she left. Wang Yang finally looked up at the plate of fruit. She sighed. She hadn't meant to treat her mother this way, but she truly didn't know how to face her. She picked up a slice of orange with her slender fingers, chewed it slowly, and suddenly her eyes grew hot. She remembered her past life in Tao family village, when she had never enough food or clothing, when hunger and beatings were part of daily life. And yet, back then, her mother's love had been a source of warmth. Weak though she was, Madame Zhang had always done her utmost to shield her children. Meanwhile, Madame Zhang returned angrily to the main room. Old Madame Tian came forward with a smile. "Madam, did the young mistress eat the fruit?" Madame Zhang ignored her, sat down heavily on the Kong, and burst into tears. "Tell me, what kind of fate is this of mine? What heinous sin have I committed? I raised that girl with my own blood and sweat, and now she treats me this way." Madame Tian's face stiffened clearly, the rift between mother and daughter was still unhealed. With a sigh, she poured tea. "Madam, don't be upset. The young mistress has always been the most filial of daughters. She's only troubled for the moment. Give her a little more time, she'll come to understand your good heart." Madame Zhang gulped the tea down and snapped resentfully, "What is there for her to understand? Her uncle is my own younger brother. We're family. How could I stand by and do nothing? Besides, he's her elder, how could he possibly covet her deed of house ownership?" Just then, a maid came in to announce, "Madam, the young master uncle has arrived." Madame Zhang's eyes lit up. She leapt to her feet, delighted. "See! My brother has come to return the deed." She rushed out to greet him, smiling ear to ear. "Brother, you've come. The journey was long, you must be tired. Quick, come in and sit." She eagerly took Zhang Dalong's satchel. Behind him, his wife Madame Luo trailed in, her jaw nearly dropping to the floor at the sight of the spacious two-courtyard residence with its own little garden. Rockeries, flower beds, winding corridors, exquisite and refined everywhere she looked. Even the imperial concubines in the palace couldn't live in such luxury. Once inside the main room, a warm pear blossom fragrance filled the air. Against the window sat a jujubwood Kong, on which rested a low table and a root-kiln fruit box. Madame Zhang seated her brother on the Kong. Old Madame Tian brought a stool for Madame Luo and served tea. Madame Luo downed it in gulps before smacking her lips. "This tea is delicious. I was parched." "Ah, sister, you're really living in style now. This residence is so beautiful, even the palace ladies might envy you." Madame Zhang laughed. "Sister-in-law, you always jest. I'm only blessed because of my daughter." But as soon as she mentioned her daughter, Madame Zhang's smile faded. She sighed and asked her brother, "Brother, why have you come today? Is it to return the house deed?" At this, Zhang Dalong's expression darkened. He raised his teacup, blew away a few leaves, and sipped silently. Madame Luo grew anxious. How could they possibly give back such a deed so easily? That would be letting them off far too cheap. If it were up to her, she would never return it at all. But Zhang Dalong dared not disobey the Prince of Qi's household, fear bound his tongue. Seeing her husband hesitate, Madame Luo worried he might actually hand it back. She slammed her teacup down and raised her voice, "Sister, you sit here enjoying luxury, weighted on hand and foot, yet do you even spare a thought for how your brother and nephew are living? We traveled so far to see you, barely have we set foot inside, and already you press us to return the deed. Are you trying to drive your own brother to his death? If he dies, what will become of his parents and son? Who will they rely on then? With that, she plopped onto the ground and began cursing, accusing Madame Zhang of heartlessness, of abandoning her own parents, brother, and nephew, treating her kin like thieves. Flustered and red-faced, Madame Zhang hurried to explain, "Sister-in-law, please get up. Tu never meant that. The deed. The deed can be returned after a while, too." Old Madame Tian could stomach it no longer. She stepped forward to lift Madame Luo and spoke coldly, "Madame Uncle, please rise. Our Madame has always trusted young Master Uncle. Otherwise, tell me, who else would lend out a house deed to their kin?" She deliberately bit hard on the word lend. Madame Luo froze, then her expression twisted. With a sudden slap, she struck old Madame Tian across the face. "Ah!" Old Madame Tian cried out, clutching her cheek in shock and fury. Since Wang Yang had purchased her, no one had dared lay a hand on her. That she should now be struck by this freeloading so-called Madame Uncle was intolerable. Her throat rasped with rage, and she clenched her fists. You dare hit me? Dare? Of course. When the masters are speaking, what right has a lowly servant to interrupt? Madame Luo sneered, raising her hand to strike again. Sister-in-law. Madame Zhang rushed to shield the woman. Nanny Tian is like family, please, don't treat her like this. Madame Luo was enraged. Oh. So this old servant counts as family, yet you treat your own kin so coldly? You'd let a servant trample over me? She jabbed a finger at Madame Zhang's nose. Out of my way. Today I'll teach this old hag a lesson, no matter what. She shoved Madame Zhang aside. With a cry, Madame Zhang stumbled against the table, pain contorting her face. Zhang Dalong made a half-hearted move to intervene, but his wife's glare silenced him. He turned his head away, not daring to interfere. With a vicious kick, Madame Luo sent old Madame Tian sprawling to the ground, clutching her stomach and groaning in agony. Madame Luo spat in disdain. Next time, open your eyes and remember who the true master of this house is. Who is the master of this house? A furious voice thundered from the doorway. Madame Luo whipped around. Seeing that it was Wang Yang, she scoffed and sat herself down on the Kong. Huh. And here I thought it was someone important. Turns out it's just you, a girl with a father but no upbringing. Nudging her husband, she sneered, see? You dote on your niece, yet she shows you no respect at all. Wang Yang laughed in anger. Respect? Tell me, how am I supposed to respect the ones who stole my deed? Wang Yang laughed angrily. Respect? Why should I respect someone who stole my house deed? What? Say that again. Madame Luo, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, rushed up to Wang Yang, her breath hissing. She raised her hand to strike. No. Brother! Madame Zhang cried out in shock. She threw herself forward, blocking in front of Wang Yang. Smack. A sharp sound rang out, and 5 red fingerprints appeared on Madame Zhang's face. Wang Yang froze. She hadn't thought Madame Luo would truly dare hit. Her anger flared instantly. She pulled her mother aside and slapped Madame Luo several times in quick succession. Ah! Madame Luo shrieked from the pain, her face swelling red and puffy. You dare hit me? Madame Luo screeched, her face now like a swollen pig's head. Fury seemed to spout from her nostrils. You little whore, today I'll kill you. Her face twisted viciously, she lunged at Wang Yang as if to tear off a piece of her flesh. Wang Yang sneered coldly, pulled out a silver needle, and with a light jab pricked her attacker. Madame Luo let out a miserable scream and collapsed to the ground, her face ashen. Wife. Zhang Dalong rushed over to hold her when he saw her suffer. What's wrong with you? Madame Luo instantly became a meek little quail, hiding in her husband's arms and shedding tears. Husband, your elder sister and her daughter are trying to kill me. I'm in such pain. Zhang Dalong couldn't stand to see his wife cry. Rage exploded from him as he glared at Wei Yang. You wretched brat. No matter what, she is your aunt. Yet you dare act so unfilial toward your elder? I'll beat you to death today. No, no, brother, you mustn't. Madame Zhang cried out, rushing to shield her daughter. Wei Yang held her mother back and shouted toward the doorway, Fu Qiu. At her call, a maid shot in like the wind, landing steadily in front of Wei Yang. With one move, she twisted Zhang Dalong's arm. He cried out miserably and fell to the floor groaning. Brother! Madame Zhang gasped, wanting to help him up, but Wei Yang stopped her. Looking coldly at the couple on the ground, Wei Yang ordered, throw the two of them to the magistrate. Tell them these two trespassed into my home and attacked us with weapons. Wei Yang. Madame Zhang clutched her daughter's hand, pleading, no matter what, he is your uncle. Wei Yang pretended to hesitate, then sighed heavily. Fine. For mother's sake, I won't send them to the authorities. But from now on, they are not allowed to set foot here again. Fu Qiu and Cui Cui obeyed at once. Each grabbed one and hauled the couple out. Madame Luo, unused to such humiliation, flailed in Cui Cui's grip like a struggling chick, screaming, you're all inhuman. Just you wait, just you wait. Cui Cui wasn't about to indulge her. She stuffed a handful of grass into Madame Luo's mouth, muffling her cries to nothing but garbled hums. Madame Zhang was already weeping bitterly. She sat slumped on the threshold, watching her younger brother being thrown out, her heart aching. But since her daughter had already made a concession by not turning them over to officials, she dared not make further requests. Mother. Wei Yang helped her up and wiped away her tears with a handkerchief. Don't cry. Uncle went too far this time. I only meant for him to suffer a lesson. If he changes in the future, I promise I won't hold it against him. Madame Zhang, comforted by her daughter's words, felt a little better. With Madame Tian's help, she washed and freshened up. Madame Tian then supported her onto the curtained bed. Madam, you should rest. After such a commotion today, you must be tired. Leaning back against a large pillow, Madame Zhang sighed. I never thought things between nephew and aunt would become this bad. She patted Madame Tian's hand. Today you also suffered a beating because of may feel so guilty. Madame Tian was taken aback, her eyes turning red. She knew Madame Zhang truly treated her like family. From then on, her loyalty to Madame Zhang was unwavering. Later, she would even risk her life to protect Madame Zhang and this household, but that is a story for another time. After throwing out Zhang Dalong and his wife, Wei Yang returned to the study. Beside her, Cui Cui fumed indignantly. Young lady, you should have just sent those two dogs straight to the magistrate. She had served Wei Yang loyally for nearly 2 years now, bound by a death contract. Since she knew of Wei Yang's cross-dressing secret, nothing was hidden from her anymore. Fu Qiu quietly tugged at her sleeve, warning her not to speak so loudly. But Cui Cui refused to obey, pouting in defiance. Fu Qiu could only sigh inwardly, what a foolish maid. In another great household, she would have been beaten black and blue long ago. Wei Yang leaned lazily on the Luohan couch. Fu Qiu immediately stepped forward to adjust a pillow behind her waist. Wei Yang nodded in comfort, then teased Cui Cui. You only know how to shout all day. You should learn from your sister Fu Qiu. Otherwise, when you marry someday, your husband will be scared off by your loud voice. Cui Cui pouted, then snuggled close to sit at Wei Yang's feet. I won't get married. What's so good about marriage? I'll stay with you forever, young lady, and travel the world's mountains and rivers together. Wei Yang tapped her head. You? The one who can't walk when she sees a handsome young man? I don't believe you for a second. Cui Cui flushed crimson, flustered. Young lady, what are you saying? When was I ever like that? Her burly, tough figure suddenly turning shy sent Wei Yang into a fit of laughter. Fu Qiu also smiled. In her heart, though, she marveled Cui Cui wasn't even born into this household, yet her bond with Wei Yang was so strong. A pang of envy suddenly welled inside her. Meanwhile, after being thrown out, Zhang Daolong and his wife stumbled away, limping, until they found a cheap inn. As soon as they entered the room, Madame Luo erupted in curses, hurling insults at Wayne Yang and Madame Zhang, then yanking her husband's ear to scold him. "If you dare hand over that house deed to that little whore, I'll divorce you. But if we don't give it, what about the explanation to Prince Chi's household?" "Explanation?" Madame Luo sneered. "We'll just ruin that little whore's reputation, make her a prostitute who's been with thousands of men. Would Prince Chi's residents still want her then?" That's not right," Zhang Daolong hesitated. "After all, she is my own niece." "Bah!" Madame Luo spat in his face. "Niece, my foot. What kind of niece throws her uncle out the door? You treat her as family, but to her you're nothing but a bastard turtle." She sobbed loudly, collapsing over the table. "My life is so bitter. I married a useless coward of a man who can't even stand up when his wife is bullied. Listen here, if you don't do as I say, I'll take our son and leave, and you'll never see him again." Their son was Zhang Daolong's life, his weakness. Hearing this, he quickly soothed her. All right, don't be angry. I'll do whatever you say." The couple schemed together and decided, tomorrow, they would storm into the embroidery workshop, make a scene, and seize the shop for themselves. The blazing sun scorched the ground, and the air was thick with heat and dust. The noisy street was suddenly pierced by a shrill and venomous voice. A woman in a low-cut ruffled gauze skirt, her face caked with heavy makeup, stood there with fury distorting her painted features. Her eyes blazed with rage and provocation, like a fire about to erupt. She pointed at the signboard of the Tao family embroidery shop, her voice sharp and piercing, "Surname Tao, you shameless hussy. An unmarried girl seducing my patron today, I'll expose your true face, you little whore." Passers-by and porters immediately stopped to stare. They gathered around, whispering to one another, some surprised, some amused, some skeptical. A patron? Wasn't this woman a courtesan from Baihua brothel? But wasn't Tao embroidery run by only one Tao? And this unmarried girl she spoke of, what could that be? The sudden appearance of this woman brought not only a stir of coolness to the hot afternoon, but also a storm of scandal. Inside the shop, Wayne Yang stood quietly in the inner hall, peering through the lattice window at the commotion outside. Her eyes were calm, unruffled. But Chunmei was anxious and furious. Planting her hands on her hips, she snapped, "Where did this whore crawl out from, daring to cause trouble at our shop?" Then, turning to Wayne Yang, she declared, "Master, stay inside, I'll deal with her." Wayne Yang gave her a slight nod. Zue, seeing this, rolled up her sleeves. "Sister Chunmei, wait for me, I'll go too." Chunmei stepped out onto the stairs, her stance commanding and resolute. "You watch your filthy mouth. There is no such person here. If you don't leave at once, I'll report you to the magistrate. Our Tao embroidery has always been upright and clean, we will not let you spread lies here." The courtesan's face twisted even more with spite. She glared fiercely at Chunmei, then, amid the crowd's murmurs, she pulled out a handkerchief and spat on it. This is from your Tao shopkeeper, left for my patron. Will you still deny it?" Like water splashed into hot oil, the crowd erupted. Everyone knew the shopkeeper of Tao embroidery was a man. Could it be? The shopkeeper liked men? Had he seduced another man's sweetheart? But wait, last year wasn't he rumored to have dallied with a young widow? You're full of nonsense. Chunmei's face flushed red with anger. She lunged forward, ready to claw the woman. But the courtesan darted into the crowd, holding the handkerchief aloft. "See for yourselves. This was given by that little hussy to my patron." The onlookers leaned in. Sure enough, the embroidery was from Tao embroidery, with a small Tao stitched in the corner. But wait, something's off. The shopkeeper of Tao is a man. Did you mistake the person? Someone in the crowd questioned, throwing the scene into deeper confusion. The courtesan faltered, clearly not expecting this. For a moment her face showed doubt, but soon fury replaced it. She waved the handkerchief, screeching even louder, "Impossible! That man told me himself this was sewn by shopkeeper Tao. You're all lying to me. Laughter broke out. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, eyeing the courtesan with disdain. Huh. You must be crazy from trying to swindle money. Everyone here knows the shopkeeper of Tao embroidery is a man. How could you not? At that moment, Wang Yang stepped out from the inner hall. Her face was serene, her step steady, as though none of this chaos concerned her. Miss, she said gently but firmly, I am the shopkeeper of Tao embroidery, Tao Dalong. I swear on my honor our shop has never done anything improper. As for that handkerchief, I truly know nothing of it. If someone has impersonated us, I will investigate. But until then, I ask you not to slander us or disrupt our trade. The courtesan froze in shock. You're the shopkeeper? You're a man? She looked around, seeing the crowd whispering and chuckling. Realizing her plan had failed, embarrassment flushed her painted cheeks. Still, she tried to save face. Humph. Just you wait, I won't let this go. Stuffing the handkerchief into her bosom, she shoved through the crowd and disappeared down the street. Chunmei and Suetsue both let out sighs of relief, but Wang Yang's brows furrowed. She knew this was no accident. Someone was pulling the strings. She exchanged a glance with Fuqiu. Fuqiu gave a slight nod and silently followed the courtesan's trail. Before long, she returned with news. The culprits were none other than Wang Yang's uncle and aunt. Wang Yang let out a cold laugh. Bring them here. I want my mother to see for herself what sort of people her beloved brother and sister-in-law truly are. Soon, Fuqiu dragged in the bound pair, and Wang Yang's mother, Madame Zhang, was summoned as well. When Zhang stepped into the shop and saw her brother and sister-in-law tied up on the floor, her face turned pale. She could hardly believe her cherished younger brother would stoop so low. Wang Yang stood before her, her tone calm yet laced with sorrow. Mother, do you see now? These are the ones you protect so dearly. For their own gain, they would ruin my reputation, destroy my chastity. Had I not been disguised as a man, if I were still but a woman, even 100 explanations could not save me from disgrace. Madame Zhang's lips trembled. Her eyes filled with grief and fury. She turned to her daughter, voice choked with tears, Wang Yang. I didn't know they could do such a thing. What? What do you intend to do? What to do? Wang Yang's face darkened, her tone unyielding. They failed this time, but who knows what venom they will use next. I'll hand them to the magistrate and ask for strict punishment. At this, Zhang Daolong and his wife Luo panicked, struggling and muffled beneath their gags. But, he is your uncle. Zhang wept, torn between love and outrage. Her body shook, her tears poured like rain. She couldn't bear the thought of sending her own brother to prison. And yet what was more precious than a woman's reputation? How could she allow them to destroy her daughter's future? Suddenly, Luo managed to spit out her gag and shrieked, Tao Wang Yang. You dare dress as a man? That is a crime against the emperor. I'll report you to the authorities myself. Her piercing words fell like thunder, stunning everyone. Madame Zhang's heart leapt to her throat. If this secret spread, her daughter would face endless peril, even ruin. Her face twisted with desperation. Grabbing a stick from the doorway, she brought it crashing down on Luo's head. Zhang Dalong's eyes bulged in terror. He never imagined his gentle elder sister could strike so mercilessly. Bound and gagged, he could only shake his head in panic. Madame Zhang herself looked horrified at what she had done. Dropping the stick, she fell pale and trembling, then burst into tears as she clutched Wang Yang. My child, it's your mother's fault. It's all my fault that you've suffered so much. Wang Yang gently patted her back. Mother, it is not your fault. She sniffled softly, her voice weary with suppressed grievance. I can spare uncle from prison. But from this day forward, you must never see him again. Madame Zhang knew this was the only way. She wiped her tears and said firmly, Brother. I've loved you most of all, but you and your wife have been too cruel to my daughter. From this day forth, our sibling bond is severed. Never show your face to me again. She staggered out, supported by Tsue, without another glance. Wang Yang watched her mother's retreating figure, a pang of pity in her heart. But she knew her mother was too soft-hearted. Without such harsh medicine, she would never truly cut ties. She turned her cold gaze down on Zhang Dalong. Her lips curled in scorn. Well then, my dear uncle. Do you prefer the magistrate's quarter perhaps to be delivered to second young master of Prince Chi's household? Fuqiu yanked the gag from his mouth and sneered, why even ask, mistress? Best to hand him to the second young master. He already ordered that anyone who offends you be beaten or killed without question. Terror drained all color from Zhang Dalong's face. He knew he had no choice left. Tu was wrong, he stammered, trembling. I shouldn't have listened to my wife's poison words. The deed was vile. The deed was mine. The deed. He fumbled in his robe, pulling out a deed to property. The house. The deed, I'll return it to you now. Wang Yang took it, examined it carefully, then smiled faintly. Remember your choice today. Behave yourself henceforth. She ordered Fuqiu, send them back to the village. From this day on, they are not to step a single foot outside. Fuqiu obeyed, dragging the disgraced couple away. The room fell silent. Wang Yang rubbed her aching temples. Chunmei sighed. Master, don't waste your heart on those black-hearted wretches. They're not worth it. Wang Yang nodded lightly and drew out a 200 silver note. Later, have someone deliver this to the courtesan at Baihua House. It turned out that yesterday, Zhang Dalong and his wife had wanted to hire a courtesan to ruin Wang Yang's reputation. But the money they offered was too little, and unfamiliar with Sioux City, they hadn't managed to find a suitable one even after half a day. So Wang Yang decided to turn their plan to her own advantage. She found a courtesan herself, had her accidentally encounter Madame Luo, and then accept Madame Luo's commission. In this way, she severed the sibling bond between Zhang Shi and Zhang Dalong with a single stroke of the sword. From now on, she, Tao Wang Yang, would no longer have to be subject to others' control because of her mother's kindness and weakness. The river breeze was fresh, the sunset bright. Hibiscus blossoms swayed gently, glowing in the evening light. A cool breath drifted in with the night wind as the streets gradually filled with pedestrians. Some gossip-loving women gathered together, still chattering about what had happened just a few hours before. Do you think that courtesan mistook the person? Of course she did. Who knows? The way that courtesan described things it sounded convincing. Exactly. Maybe shopkeeper Tao really does like men. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so cold to women. The women burst into laughter. But mid-laughter, they saw shopkeeper Tao emerge from Tao's embroidery workshop. He was holding his clothes maid by the hand, the two talking and laughing, their manner intimate. The maid's hairpin slipped from her hair, and shopkeeper Tao bent down to pick it up. With great gentleness, he tucked it back into her bun, then let his hand trail down along her hair to her cheek, giving it a tender squeeze. The women instantly fell silent, and then gradually showed looks of envy. This shopkeeper Tao really is handsome. That personal maid of his is truly blessed. Pa, look at you thinking spring thoughts. Don't you know the wrinkles on your face could squash a fly to death? The group laughed and fanned themselves, their chatter rolling on. Meanwhile, Wang Yang, pulling Fuqiu by the hand, was about to step into the carriage when heavy footsteps rumbled behind her. She turned to see Zhang Dali striding over. He bowed respectfully. My young master invites you. Wang Yang followed his gaze and saw a spacious carriage waiting at the corner of the street. Mu Linghao had not shown himself since that last time 10 days ago. Fuqiu helped Wang Yang up into the carriage. Mu Linghao leaned against the cushion, eyes closed as if dozing. At the sound of movement, his lids snapped open, his gaze icy. Wang Yang's lips twitched. What now? Why was he unhappy again? She hadn't provoked him. Mu Linghao let out a low, humorless laugh. While I've been away from Sioux City, it seems your days have been quite pleasant. His eyes swept outside. Zhang Dali, take that hairpin from Fuqiu's head. Fuchio's heart jolted. She instantly dropped to her knees on the hard cobblestones. This slave has done wrong. I dare not trouble you, young master. I'll pull the hairpin out myself. With a sharp clink, the pin hit the ground. Even through the carriage walls, Wang Yang could sense Fuchio's terror. Her heart stirred with pity. Biting her lip, she asked softly, what mistake has Fuchio committed? Then pleaded, young master, with so many eyes watching, please, just let her rise. Mu Linghao's gaze returned to Wang Yang, the frost in his eyes seeming to soften a little. Rise? If you ever do something improper with her again, the punishment will be far harsher than kneeling. Could it be he was jealous? Wang Yang was taken aback. Her beautiful eyes turned sly for an instant. She parted her lips, her voice soft. Young master asked whether my days have been good. They've been ordinary, nothing good or bad. But if you were here, they would certainly be better. As she spoke, her cheeks flushed pink and she lowered her head shyly. Mu Linghao's brow lifted ever so slightly. His gaze, withdrawing from the window, fixed intently on her. Those dark, fathomless eyes seemed able to pierce the heart. He drew her slender waist into his embrace. You always find a way to make a man helpless against you. His voice was low, magnetic. Wang Yang arched a brow. She knew this was his form of concession. Perhaps he wasn't truly angry, only testing his place in her heart. Pretending to be startled, she covered her mouth. Oh my, is the young master praising me? I hardly deserve it. The tension between them eased. The air inside the carriage lightened. Wang Yang tilted her head toward the door. Why don't you let Fuchio up now? It really looks unseemly at the street corner. Rise, Mu Linghao ordered. Thank you, young master. Fuchio kowtowed once before standing. The carriage rolled forward, its pace steady. Inside, the air grew softer, tinged with a quiet intimacy. Mu Linghao's fingers brushed over the back of Wang Yang's hand, the light touch making her pulse quicken, her cheeks bloom with faint color. She lowered her head slightly, avoiding his penetrating gaze. Her shy demeanor stirred within him a tenderness he had never known. He loosened his grip on her hand, only to draw her closer. His breath warmed her ear. Wang Yang, why is it you can so easily make me yield? Wang Yang lifted her face. Her eyes shone in the night. Young master, your words make me, but Mu Linghao raised a finger, gently pressing it against her lips, silencing her. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The space between them vanished, leaving only their breaths and pounding hearts echoing in the still air. His arm circled her slender waist, slowly pulling her against him. Wang Yang did not refuse, nor did she struggle. She yielded, leaning into his broad chest, surrendering to the stillness and warmth of that moment. Yet within, her heart was far from calm. She knew her reliance on Mu Linghao was but a temporary expedient. His promises offered her a rare sense of security, but that tenderness was built on falsehood. Closing her eyes, she pretended to be intoxicated by the illusion, but inwardly she remained clear-headed. She could not allow herself to sink into this unreal mire of feeling, nor reveal her true emotions before him. In a world ruled by power and profit, genuine emotion was a luxury too costly to afford. To him, she was nothing more than a Puvna plaything. The carriage moved steadily through the night, their figures faintly visible behind the curtain. Their entanglement was like a war without smoke, fought in silence beneath the cover of darkness. Yet no matter how this game might end, Wang Yang knew she must stay sharp and resolute. With wisdom and courage, she would seize her own future, the true happiness and freedom that belonged to her alone. Inside the study, a sandalwood desk stood neatly arranged with the 4 treasures of the study. The brushes on the rack hung in perfect order, and a faint fragrance of ink wafted from the inkstone. In the corner of the desk, a bronze crane-shaped lamp burned quietly. Mu Linghao spread out several maps under the lamplight, carefully studying them. These past few days he had searched several locations, yet none proved to be the gold mine. It turned out that Sioux City's prosperity was not only due to its convenient geographical location, but also because Prince Chu possessed a gold mine of abundant reserves. This time, Mu Linghao had assumed a new identity to come to Sioux City precisely to discover the location of that gold mine. Outside the window, the broad green leaves of a banana plant swayed in the breeze, rustling in harmony with the silence inside the study. The door to the room was half closed. At times, a draft of wind would push against it, producing faint creaks, as though whispering ancient tales. The clang-clang of a night watchman's clappers reverberated through the empty streets, shattering the silence of the night. The watchman cried out in a hoarse but resonant voice, "The air is dry, beware of fire." His shout lingered long in the night air. "Master, it is already the third watch. You should rest." Zhang Dali bowed respectfully. Mu Linghao furrowed his brows, his fingertips brushing against his temple as though to smooth away the heaviness in his heart. He gave a slight nod and, with composed steps, walked toward the main room. A flicker of eagerness stirred within him, for he knew that a beautiful woman awaited him there like a flower bud ready to bloom. This was but a temporary residence in Sioux City. The courtyard was not large, nor as heavily regulated as the Prince of Cheese mansion. A few lanterns swayed in the breeze along the veranda, casting elongated shadows of Mu Linghao's tall figure. Inside the main room, a bright candle glowed, its light flickering across the finely carved bed and its luxurious curtains, casting a hazy beauty over the chamber. Wang Yang reclined against the couch, having shed her outer robe to reveal the delicate silk garment clinging to her skin. Her hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall, blending with her graceful attire to form the image of a gentle beauty from a painting. "Miss, look at this, such a brilliant passage. The travel notes you lent me are truly wonderful. Would I recommend it if it weren't a good book?" Wang Yang and Fuqiu huddled together, discussing the book's highlights, their eyes sparkling with joy. Mu Linghao's brows tightened slightly. "It seems lively in here." The two women froze. Fuqiu immediately lowered her head and stepped back 10 paces, holding her breath and quieting herself. Wang Yang laughed softly at the sight, linking her arm through Mu Linghao's. "Our young master has returned. Look at Yuuv," frightened Fuqiu so much her face has gone pale. She playfully circled him once. "Fuqiu, our young master is so handsome, he's not a tiger ready to eat people. Why are you so afraid of him?" The corners of Mu Linghao's lips curved almost imperceptibly as he sat down on the couch, still feigning sternness, and casually picked up the book Wang Yang had been reading. Leaning against him, Wang Yang said, "Young master, isn't this passage marvelous? Reading it feels as though one is there in person." Seeing them discussing the travel notes, Fuqiu quietly let out a breath of relief, then hurried to order a maid to bring tea and prepare bath water. Night deepened, and the silver moon hung like a hook. Mu Linghao stepped out of the bath chamber, clad in a light silk robe that fluttered with his movements. His long, damp hair fell loosely over his broad shoulders. Droplets of water slid from the tips of his hair, down his striking features, along the lines of his neck, and disappeared beneath his collar. Wang Yang sat by the window couch, twirling a freshly picked jasmine flower between her fingers. Its fragrance mingled with the clean scent of his freshly bathed body, weaving a subtle air of intimacy through the room. Mu Linghao approached slowly, his gaze deep and steady, like the brightest star in the night sky, fixed upon Wang Yang. Her heartbeat quickened, she could feel the faint heat radiating from his body. An invisible weight seemed to envelop her, suffocating her with its intensity. He bent down and gently plucked the jasmine from her hand, whispering, "The flower's fragrance pales in comparison to yours." Wang Yang's cheeks flushed crimson. She lowered her gaze, her long lashes quivering like butterfly wings. His fingers tilted her chin upward, forcing her eyes to meet his. His gaze surged like a stormy vortex, as though drawing her very soul into it. Her breath grew hurried, her eyes hazy and enticing. Their lips drew closer, his breath warm and moist as it brushed against her cheek. The air between them burned taut, ready to ignite. He swept her into his arms and laid her upon the bed. His hand slipped across her garments, revealing a form as pure and delicate as a young white fawn. The corners of his eyes flushed as he gazed upon her. Wine shared before the candle, tender beauty in his embrace. Eyes glancing back, hearts entwined until she weakly pushed him away, trembling, her cheeks flushed with crimson. That night they abandoned themselves to passion, sweat like pearls upon their skin, hair tumbling loose in disarray. When Wayne Yang awoke again, only she remained in the bed. Sleepy-eyed, she clutched the quilt, frowning slightly as she looked at the tangled sheets. Slipping on soft-soled shoes, she rose from bed. Fuchiu heard the movement and entered with a maidservant, carrying toiletries. "Miss, you're awake? What hour is it? Is the young master still in the residence?" While attending to her mistress, Fuchiu glanced outside. "It's nearly the hour of tea. The young master left earlier, instructing us not to disturb you." Wayne Yang nodded slightly. "Prepare the bath. I'll dine here at noon." Fuchiu agreed. A short while later, she carried in water for the bath. Wayne Yang headed toward the bath chamber but suddenly turned back. "The sachet I embroidered for the young master is in the embroidery room. Fetch it for me, so I may tie it on to him when he returns." Fuchiu bowed and left without suspicion. Wayne Yang continued toward the bath chamber, but moments later peeked out again. Seeing no one, she quickly made her way to the study. What was Mu Linghao's true purpose in coming to Sioux City? Where had he gone during those 10 missing days? She must uncover the truth. The day she did would be the day she escaped him. Her heartbeat quickened with her steps, pounding as though it would burst from her chest. She knew her actions were perilous, but at least this was only a temporary residence, not the Prince of Cheese mansion filled with hidden guards. The study door was shut tight, exuding an air of mystery. Wayne Yang reached out, her fingertips brushing the door. Holding her breath, she crossed the threshold. Her eyes darted quickly around the room. The study was simple yet elegant, the bookshelves lined with neatly arranged volumes. A faint scent of ink lingered in the air. She moved softly to the desk, carefully rifling through the papers and ink upon it, fearful of making the slightest sound. After searching for a long time but finding no clues, Wayne Yang let out a low sigh only to suddenly notice the number 20 written on the desk. Why would this number be here? What could it mean? There was no time to ponder further. Wayne Yang quietly slipped out of the study. Not long after, Fuchiu returned. "Is this the purse that Miss was speaking of?" "That's right. When will the young master return? I'd like to tie it on for him. I heard Captain Zhang say that the young master still intends to linger in Suzhou for a while." Wayne Yang poured water into the potted plants and curled her lips. "He really has the mood for leisure. I've been in Suzhou for 2 years, and I haven't found anything worth strolling about." Fuchiu smiled. "That's only because Miss has grown used to it. In truth, Suzhou's scenery is still quite lovely, especially 20 or 30 li north of the city." Wayne Yang shrugged, listlessly setting down the watering pot. "Truly boring. Forget it, let's go. We won't eat lunch here." Fuchiu pressed her lips together in a smile. "Miss must be missing the young master, isn't that so?" Wayne Yang pretended to strike her, scolding playfully, "You little imp, always talking nonsense. Hurry and bring me men's clothing to change into." Fuchiu quickly straightened her expression, fetched the clothes, and helped her mistress change. After adjusting the ping-ding square cap on her head, Wayne Yang was just about to step out when she glanced down and noticed the purse with a loose stitch. She sighed in feigned regret. "Oh dear, what's happened here? A thread has come loose." Then she laughed cheerfully. "Fuchiu, your embroidery is quite good. Why don't you mend this spot? The weather is fine today, I'll go out for a stroll." Having long been used to her mistress's playful tone, Fuchiu put on a mock-troubled face and sighed, "Yes, this may obeys." Wayne Yang was amused, laughing as she left the main residence and walked out of the gates. In her palm lay a single thread. It was she herself who had quietly tugged it loose. Looking back once at the gates, she thought, "Fuchiu, don't blame me for deceiving you. Blame yourself for acknowledging only Mu Linghao as your master." Climbing into her carriage and returning to the embroidery workshop, Wayne Yang summoned Chunmei. "Chunmei, has your family lived in Suzhou for generations?" Chunmei smiled. "Indeed, we've been here for many generations. Then do you know if there's anything unusual some 20 or 30 li north of the city? Unusual? Chunmei thought for a moment. My third uncle lives out there, but I've never heard of anything special. The scenery is quite pretty though. Scenery? Wang Yang repeated quietly, then shook her head. Mu Linghao went to such lengths, even changing his name, to come to Suzhou. Could it truly be just to enjoy the scenery? Oh, that's right, Chunmei suddenly remembered. There weren't so many people in my uncle's village originally. About 10 years ago, a dozen families suddenly moved down from the mountain. They said the place was struck by heavy storms in spring and summer, with thunder that often killed people. Wang Yang froze for a moment, then said thoughtfully, so that's how it is. Without even pausing for tea, she sent Cui Cui to invite the prefect's son to meet her in a teahouse's private room. Before Cui Cui left, Wang Yang stopped her again and reminded her to be careful and not let anyone notice. Tea house, private room. Tao brother, Shangguan Hongwen greeted with a bow when he saw her. What rare mood brings you to invite me for tea today? Wang Yang returned the gesture. I hope you've been well, young master Shangguan. The reason I asked you here today is that I have a favor to ask. Shangguan Hongwen, being straightforward, immediately said, please, just speak. If it's within my ability, I won't refuse. Wang Yang nodded and lowered her voice. I'd like to ask young master Shangguan to help me investigate whether, 10 years ago, some outsiders moved into villages 20 or 30 li north of Suzhou. Shangguan Hongwen was slightly startled, not expecting such a request. Though puzzled, he agreed readily. Very well, I'll send people to look into it at once. Wang Yang exhaled in relief and said gratefully, many thanks, young master Shangguan, for your loyal assistance. A few days later, Shangguan Hongwen invited Wang Yang to a private room at a tavern. As soon as they met, he asked gravely, shopkeeper Tao, why did you ask me about the matter in the north of the city last time? Wang Yang froze for a moment. Before she could speak, Shangguan Hongwen motioned for silence. He tiptoed to the door, peeked out cautiously, then returned to the table. I don't know why shopkeeper Tao is asking about the northern part of the city, but I advise you not to inquire further. Otherwise, you'll bring disaster upon yourself and your family. His voice was low and urgent. Wang Yang's brows twitched. She knew this was no trivial matter. That only made her more curious, though on the surface she acted startled and shrank her neck. Thank you for the reminder, young master Shangguan. Otherwise I might have made a terrible mistake. She poured him a cup of wine. Come, let's not talk about anything else today. Let's only speak of friendship. I'll drink a toast to you. Shangguan Hongwen, a mere scholar, had limited drinking capacity. As the son of the prefect, he seldom had to socialize, but for some reason he always found himself unable to refuse shopkeeper Tao. It was as if, upon seeing him, he felt a strange sense of kinship. Today, since he had failed to fulfill Wang Yang's earlier request, a trace of guilt rose in his heart. So he raised his cup and drained it in one go. Unknowingly, cup after cup went down. His head grew heavier, his fair cheeks flushed like burning fire. He chuckled foolishly, Tatao shopkeeper, why have you become? Two of you? Wang Yang raised her sleeve to her lips and secretly spat the wine into the cotton hidden in her palm. She smiled faintly, young master Shangguan, your tolerance is far too low. Just a few cups and you're drunk. But inwardly she rejoiced wine could loosen a man's guard, making it easier to coax secrets out of him. So she poured another cup and placed it before him. Young master Shangguan, when kindred spirits meet, even 1,000 cups are too few. Let's drink another. Shangguan Hongwen's eyes were already hazy. Looking at the person before him, he suddenly felt that shopkeeper Tao's smile blossomed like a flower, dazzling and alluring. His heart rippled, but then he shook his head, thinking he must truly be drunk. Young master Shangguan, that matter you mentioned in the north of the city. Is it related to some major case? Wang Yang probed. Shangguan Hongwen shook his head, his tongue thick. I can't say, I really can't. It would bring great disaster. It concerns the survival of the entire Sioux city. and the Chu prince's household. Wenyang saw that even in drunkenness his lips were tightly sealed. That alone proved the matter was of immense gravity. She no longer pressed, but helped him up with a gentle laugh. "Young Master Shangguan, you are drunk. Let me find someone to take you home." He nodded drowsily. Already too far gone to walk on his own, he leaned on the servant boy she summoned. Leaving the tavern, Wenyang guided him onto a carriage and accompanied him back to the prefect's mansion. Though she had not pried out specifics, she now knew for certain, something enormous was hidden in the north of the city. Back at her residence, she lay on the bed turning it over in her mind. She knew she couldn't let it go. Whatever secret lay in the north, she had to uncover it. In the days that followed, Wenyang used her growing closeness with Shangguan Hongwen to probe indirectly. Although he always dodged such questions with caution, under her subtle guidance he occasionally let slip fragments of information. Piecing the clues together, Wenyang gradually outlined the truth, what could concern both Sioux City and the Chu prince's survival. Naturally, the lifeblood of wealth. And in the north lay the source of the prince's Fortunia gold mine. Night was as deep and thick as ink, the mansion swallowed by endless darkness. Wenyang sat alone in her dim chamber. The faint glow of the candle lit her beautiful face, but could not dispel the sorrow in her eyes. Mu Linghao's heavy footsteps approached. He gazed at Wenyang's solitary figure, and an inexplicable restlessness surged in his chest. Why did she seem even farther beyond reach tonight? He came up behind her, pressing gently on her shoulders, his voice low with a rare trace of tenderness. "Wenyang, you smell so sweet tonight." But Wenyang tilted away from his touch, her tone cool. "My lord, it is late. Why have you summoned me here?" Mu Linghao's expression darkened instantly. Frowning, he asked with displeasure, "Wenyang, are you deliberately distancing yourself from me? Lately you've been so elusive I cannot fathom you. Tonight I came especially to see you, yet you meet me with such coldness. What is the meaning of this?" Wenyang gave a cold laugh. She lifted her gaze to his, her tone tinged with ice. "I am nothing more than a plaything to you, called when wanted, dismissed when not. I am weary of such days." Mu Linghao's heart flared with anger. He stared hard at her, searching those beautiful eyes for some clue, but all he saw was endless grievance and chill. "Wenyang, how can you speak so?" His voice carried restrained fury. "When have I ever treated you as a plaything? You have always held a special place in my heart." But she only sneered, disdain flickering in her gaze. "A special place? Yet when have you ever truly respected me? Every summons of yours has been nothing but for your own desire." Her words enraged him fully. Mu Linghao shot to his feet and roared, "You are utterly unreasonable." Wenyang met his glare without flinching, retorting coldly, "No, Mu Linghao, the unreasonable one is you. You think that having power means you can toy with others' fates at will. Let me tell you this, I, Tao Wenyang, though of humble birth, also have dignity and limits. I am sick of being trapped in your palm." Mu Linghao stared at her in shock. Never had he imagined such deep resentment hidden within her. His face turned iron blue. After one last furious glare, he flung his sleeve and stormed out. His figure vanished into the night, leaving Wenyang alone. On her face flickered a trace of resolve. The dark night enveloped everything, and she seemed to merge with it. Yet instead of panic or unease, a faint smile touched her lips. She knew the entanglement with Mu Linghao was nearing its end. Slowly, she stood and walked to the window. Raising her eyes to the ink-black sky, she saw scattered stars shimmering, as if whispering secrets to her. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes listening to the sky's murmur, and reaffirming her own determination. Mu Linghao's heart was consumed by a raging fire. This woman seemed to hold the key to his emotions, always able to easily ignite his fury. His breathing came hot and heavy like a fire dragon, as though all his wrath was about to erupt. Zhang Dali, his ever-loyal guard who followed him like a shadow, trailed behind carefully, fearful of brushing against his master's temper. Suddenly, Mu Linghao stopped in his tracks and spun around. His burning eyes fixed on Zhang Dali. "Go," he ordered coldly. Find out exactly what she's been doing recently." A mocking smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he added, her sudden change in attitude. "Has she found herself a new backer and now believes she can oppose me?" Zhang Dali's heart jolted. He bowed and hurried off without a trace of hesitation. For the next few days, Zhang Dali shadowed Wenyang, but everything appeared perfectly ordinary. Frustrated, he decided to pry from those around her, and so he approached the innocent young maid, Sui. With a little coaxing, the girl revealed the truth. Wenyang had discovered the location of the Sioux City gold mine and even secured a lucrative management post for it from one of the Chu prince's concubines. With the Chu royal household as her powerful backing, she no longer had reason to endure Mu Linghao's oppression. Zhang Dali rushed back that very night to report. "Gold mine?" Mu Linghao laughed aloud. This was truly search high and low only to find it by chance. After so long looking, the gold mine had finally fallen into his grasp. Ecstasy surged through him, yet the thought that Wenyang dared defy him rekindled his anger, filling him with indignation and unwillingness. At dawn the next day, Mu Linghao and Zhang Dali set out early, trailing Wenyang and her party from afar. They pushed through dense forest, branches scraping their faces and clothes. They climbed carefully over sheer cliffs, wary of a single misstep. After a long, grueling trek, they finally reached a remote and hidden valley. There they saw Wenyang and her attendants busy at work. Mu Linghao's heart leaped, believed he had found the gold mine. But just as he prepared to move in and seize control, a thunderous shout rang out, "Who dares trespass here and spy on secrets?" Black-clad men surged forth from all sides, blades flashing, eyes sharp and merciless. Mu Linghao and Zhang Dali were stunned. Only then did they realize they had walked straight into a trap. It had all been Wenyang's plan. She had provoked Mu Linghao to lower his guard and lured him with false information, all to expose his true face to the Chu prince and rid herself of him. Mu Linghao's eyes widened in fury and disbelief. To be toyed with by a womanette was intolerable. Wenyang met his gaze coldly, her face showing no fear or guilt, only resolve. He had forced her into becoming his captive and plaything. How could he blame her for striking back mercilessly now? Their eyes clashed in midair, sparks seeming to fly. They both knew this was the point of no return. Amid the chaos, Zhang Dali lunged at Wenyang, desperate to seize her. She evaded nimbly, but he roared with rage, "You wretch! I'll kill you today." With that, he shoved at her, trying to hurl her off the cliff. To everyone's shock, Wenyang stumbled and truly fell toward the precipice. "Ah!" she cried out, teetering over the abyss. Mu Linghao was horrified. He hadn't expected Zhang Dali's reckless attack. Seeing Wenyang about to plunge to her death, he rushed forward without hesitation to pull her back. But it was too late. Her body dropped like a severed kite into the chasm below. In his reckless dash, Mu Linghao also lost his balance and fell after her. The wind roared past, icy against his ears. Terror and regret filled him. To risk his life for a woman, what utter foolishness. Yet now, powerless, he could only fall, surrendering to gravity and awaiting death. Through the mist and clouds, Wenyang plummeted. The wind held in her ears like the call of death. Then suddenly her fall was jolted to a stop. Agony shot through her body. She realized she had been caught by branches. Peering through pain, she saw herself dangling from the fork of a sturdy tree that had broken her fall. Battered but alive, she pulled herself to safety. Looking around, Mu Linghao was nowhere in sight. That had fallen further down. Cautiously, she climbed down the cliffside. At last, she found him sprawled among jagged rocks. Blood streaked his head, his face white as paper. He was unconscious. Examining him, she realized his head was badly injured and he needed urgent care. A flood of conflicted feelings washed over her. She recalled how, moments before, he had flung himself toward her to save her life. Despite the hatred she bore, his selfless act shook her deeply. After much inner struggle, Wenyang relented. She dragged him with great effort into a sheltered cave, laid him down, and covered him with her cloak against the cold. Bending close, she tended his wounds. With no knowledge of herbs, she tore strips from her dress to bind the bleeding and applied silver needles where she could. Fetching water, she carefully dripped it past his lips. Slowly, his breathing steadied, a trace of color returning to his face. Wenyang sighed in relief and sat quietly by his side, waiting for him to awaken. Just as Wenyang was guarding Mu Linghao, feeling anxious and unsettled, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over her. The exhaustion from the past days, coupled with the dangers she had just gone through, finally overwhelmed her body. Darkness clouded her vision, and she collapsed softly beside Mu Linghao. She did not know how long she had been unconscious when she slowly opened her eyes to find herself lying in a simple wooden hut that carried the fresh fragrance of pine. Sunlight streamed through the delicate lattice windows, falling gently upon her, bringing a trace of warmth. She rubbed her eyes lightly and looked around. Though sparsely furnished, the room exuded a rustic and natural charm. At that moment, the door creaked open, and an elderly woman with a face full of wrinkles but gentle eyes entered. Seeing Wenyang awake, her face immediately blossomed into a kind smile. In a soft voice she asked, "Girl, you're awake? Do you feel any better?" With the old woman's help, Wenyang struggled to sit up. "May I ask, where am I?" The old woman introduced herself as Madame Zhu. This was a small secluded village deep in the mountains called Yunqi Village. She explained that while out gathering herbs with some of the younger villagers, they had stumbled upon Wenyang and Mu Linghao in a nearby cave and brought them back. Wenyang gratefully thanked Madame Zhu and anxiously inquired about Mu Linghao. Madame Zhu reassured her that his injuries had stabilized, and he was resting in another room. Hearing this, Wenyang breathed a sigh of relief. Accompanied by Madame Zhu, she stepped outside the wooden hut and was instantly captivated by the view. The village was like a hidden paradise, surrounded by rolling mountains blanketed in lush green trees. The morning sunlight spilled across the slopes, making every leaf shimmer with golden light. A crystal-clear stream wound through the valley, its cheerful babbling like a sweet melody. The cottages were all wooden structures scattered gracefully along the hillside. Their thatched roofs glowed golden under the sunlight. In front of every home bloomed colorful flowers, red, yellow, purple, forming a vivid tapestry of color. Butterflies fluttered playfully among the blossoms, adding life to the serene village. Villagers were working in the fields in small groups, while others sat outside chatting in the sun. As Wenyang walked by, they greeted her with warm smiles. A little boy even shyly handed her a rosy apple. Here, time seemed to flow slowly and peacefully. No noise from the outside world disturbed them, only the sounds of nature and the laughter of simple villagers. Wenyang inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh mountain air and the tranquility it brought. Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced the sky, shattering the peaceful scene. Wenyang's expression changed instantly. She staggered toward Mu Linghao's room and pushed the door open. There, she saw him crouched in the corner, clutching his head, screaming in terror like a frightened child. Wenyang rushed forward and embraced him, trying to calm him down. But his screams continued, his eyes filled with sheer panic, as though he were lost in endless darkness with no escape. He clutched his head tightly, as if that could ease the torment. Abruptly, the screams ceased. His body went limp, and he fainted in Wenyang's arms. Wenyang's heart clenched. She quickly laid him on the bed, frantically calling his name, but he gave no response. At that moment, the door opened and Madame New, a wrinkled face full of urgency, hurried inside. Seeing Mu Linghao unconscious, she ran out at once to summon the village physician. Soon, the doctor arrived carrying his medicine box. After a careful examination, his face grew heavy. He told Wenyang and Madame Niu that Mu Linghao's head injury had severely affected him, leaving his mind like that of a 5-year-old child. Wenyang felt as if a heavy stone had been placed on her chest. She could hardly breathe. If not for saving her, how could this proud second son of the Duke of Qi's household have fallen to such a state? The guilt weighed on her like iron chains, pulling at her heart. She resolved to care for him herself, hoping one day he would recover. A few days later, under Wenyang's careful nursing, Mu Linghao slowly opened his eyes. His gaze, once sharp and commanding, now carried innocence and deep dependence. His handsome features remained unchanged, but now there was a fragile purity that stirred pity. "Sister," he whispered weakly, his voice like a broken string that tugged at the heart. Wenyan immediately clasped his hand, answering tenderly, "You're awake? I'm here, don't be afraid." Mu Linghao pouted like a child. "Sister, my head hurts." His jewel-like eyes welled with tears, threatening to spill. Wenyan sighed softly. Stroking his hair, she soothed him, "Be good, it doesn't hurt anymore. Sister is here, and I'll stay with you." Hearing this, Mu Linghao's eyes shone with trust. He clutched Wenyang's hand tightly, as if she were his only source of safety. From that day forward, Mu Linghao became utterly dependent on her. Whether eating, sleeping, or playing, he insisted she stay by his side. Wenyang cared for him without complaint, treating him like her own younger brother, helping him dress, wash, and even taking him around the village to meet others. They called each other sister and brother, settling into life in the beautiful Yunqi village. The villagers soon accepted them as part of their community, offering kindness and assistance. Mu Linghao stuck to Wenyang like a shadow, as though she were his entire world. Every morning, when the first rays of sunlight slipped through the lattice windows, he would wake and immediately search for her. Seeing Wenyang preparing breakfast, he would leap up joyfully and scamper over, tugging her sleeve, "Sister, good morning." Wenyang always smiled, patting his head gently before handing him a steaming bowl of porridge. He would drink it happily, looking up at her now and then, his eyes brimming with reliance and affection. During the day, while Wenyang worked at chores or in the fields, Mu Linghao trailed behind her like a little tail. Curious about everything, he peppered her with questions. Wenyang answered patiently, sometimes teaching him the names of flowers and insects. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves and scattered over the brook. Wenyang sat on a stone, washing clothes, while Mu Linghao crouched beside her, resting his chin in his hands, staring at her without blinking. He seemed fascinated by every single movement Wenyang made while washing. From time to time, he would reach out to touch the foamy stream water, only to have Wenyang gently pat the back of his hand, reminding him not to dirty the clothes. By dusk, when the setting sun cast its golden afterglow across the whole village, Wenyang would take Mu Linghao to sit with her on the grass in front of the house, watching the beautiful scene together. Mu Linghao would always snuggle close to Wenyang, resting his head on her shoulder, enjoying this peace and warmth. He would lift his eyes to see her cheek bathed in golden light, then let out a silly laugh. Whenever night fell, Mu Linghao would tug on Wenyang's hand, pulling her into the house. He would obediently lie down on the bed, waiting for her to tuck him in, then softly say, "Good night, sister." Only with Wenyang's gentle words would he finally close his eyes and drift into sleep. Wenyang gazed at his flawless face, delicate as carved porcelain, and felt endless pity stir in her heart. She reached out to tuck the blanket more snugly around him. In these days she had asked the villagers about a way out of the valley, but to no avail. These people had lived here for generations, never thinking of leaving, and none of them knew how. Could it be that she would remain trapped here for the rest of her life? Wenyang returned to her room, lay down on the heated brick bed, and let out a long sigh. In the vast farmland, Mu Linghao and Wenyang worked side by side. The sunlight spilled over them, as though wrapping them in a golden halo. Very soon Mu Linghao's clothes were soaked with sweat, yet he only gave a foolish grin, wiped his forehead with his hand, and looked toward Wenyang. Wenyang, as if sensing his gaze, lifted her head and smiled back at him. That smile was like the rising summer sun, warm, dazzling, radiant and tender, so beautiful that once seen, one could not look away. Mu Linghao was briefly struck dumb. But heaven was not kind. Just as they were absorbed in their work, the sky suddenly grew dark, heavy clouds massing above. In the blink of an eye, rain poured down in torrents. Wenyang reacted quickly, grabbing Mu Linghao's hand and running toward the house. The rain instantly drenched their clothes. Panting when they finally returned home, Wenyang worried he might catch a chill and have his old head ailment flare up again. She quickly snatched up a cloth, rose on her tiptoes, and began wiping the wet hair from his forehead. Her fingers brushed lightly across his skin, sending a subtle electric current through him. From her thin, damp clothes, her faint fragrance seeped out, making Mu Linghao's breath suddenly catch. As he felt her tenderness, a warmth welled up in his heart. He stared at her without blinking, only now realizing just how beautiful his Wenyang was. Although she had told him she was not his real sister, and that one day she would lead him out of the valley to find his family, in his heart he wanted no such family. Wenyang was the dearest person to him. He recalled how the village boys Juzi had told him, if they were not real siblings, they could marry. His face flushed scarlet. He didn't quite understand what marriage meant, but Juzi had said that after marrying they could sleep in each other's arms, and that thought stirred a longing in him. His eyes suddenly wandered downward, and the sight of those curves outlined by her wet clothes made his heart thump violently, as though struck by a hammer. His breathing grew hot. Abruptly, he shoved Wenyang aside, snatched the cloth from her hands, and rushed into the room shouting, "I'll do it myself." Wenyang staggered back a step, puzzled, then started to follow. Her hand touched the door, but she hesitated and drew back. After all, they were man and woman. Was it proper for her to enter now? So she simply called through the door, "Wipe yourself quickly, then change into dry clothes, or your head will ache again." "Oh," came the muffled reply from inside. Wenyang shook her head and smiled fondly. Truly still a child, changing moods as quickly as flipping a page. She turned and walked away, unaware of Mu Linghao's embarrassment inside. Having just stripped off his wet clothes, he stared down in bewilderment at his own body. How could this be? A flush of shame swept over him. He stomped his foot, flustered, and dug beneath the quilt on the brick bed, hiding himself in frustration. That night, Mu Linghao had a dream, long yet fleeting. In the dream, his Wenyang was tightly held in his arms, struggling weakly like a snow-white little creature, her cries both broken and tender. He, on the other hand, was like a fierce beast, twisting her into every posture, having his way, showing his full vigor. Such an absurd yet intoxicating dream lasted the whole night, and when he awoke, his body was drenched in dampness. When the first streak of pale light appeared on the horizon, Mu Linghao was already awake. Sitting on the edge of the heated brick bed with the quilt around him, his lips red and teeth white, his eyes still carried traces of last night's lingering emotions. He bit his lip, glanced at his own body, and struck the bed in frustration. Then he rummaged through the chest, took out clean clothes, changed quickly, and sneaked out. Clutching the soiled undergarments, he ran all the way to the riverbank and tossed them into the water with a wave of his hand. Only after erasing all evidence did he finally breathe in relief, but immediately a wave of loss washed over him, and he trudged back home with his head drooping. Hearing movement in the courtyard, Wenyang poked her head out and saw Mu Linghao returning. "What's wrong with you?" Wenyang asked, seeing him look as wilted as an eggplant struck by frost. "Did the village children bully you, or are you feeling unwell?" Mu Linghao hung his head and listlessly shook it. Wenyang noticed his pale complexion, the lifeless look in his eyes, and how his whole body seemed drained of spirit. Worried, she reached out to touch his forehead, to see if he had a fever. But just as her hand was about to touch him, Mu Linghao jerked back as though struck by lightning. "What are you doing?" he shouted, eyes reddened, brows arched. Wenyang froze. That soft, obedient little snowball of a younger brother suddenly seemed to have turned back into the arrogant young lord of the Prince of Cheese household. Her hand stopped mid-air, and she was at a loss. Mu Linghao himself was stunned, unable to believe what he had just done. Regret and shame battled on his face. How could he have yelled at his sister? With a stride, he rushed forward, clutching at Wenyang's sleeve. His eyes shimmered with guilt and desperation, and his trembling voice pleaded, "Jia, let me explain. I didn't mean to yell at you just now." I. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became, lips trembling uncontrollably. He was like a child who had committed a grave mistake, eyes red, unable to string words together. A flicker of complex emotion crossed Wenyang's gaze as she saw his trembling hand clutching her sleeve. She sighed softly, her voice light, "Forget it. You were caught in the rain yesterday and your body isn't well. Go back and lie down. I'll call you when the meal is ready." Mu Linghao bit his lip, eyes brimming like a bullied puppy. He didn't want to leave, but faced with Wei Nyang's cold expression, he dared not refuse. He shuffled back to his room, looking back every few steps, reluctant yet obedient. Once inside, he leaned against the door and pounded his head with his fists, loathing himself for being such an ungrateful wretch for yelling at his sister. For the next few days, he behaved like a guilty child, not daring to meet Wei Nyang's eyes. Wei Nyang treated him with cool indifference, few words, little warmth. The cozy, familial atmosphere they once had seemed to vanish overnight. The strained air gnawed at Mu Linghao, who scratched his head in restless misery. Regret surged in him like crashing waves. Each night, when the world grew silent, he would recall that moment he shouted at her, and his chest twisted with pain. Lying on the bed, he would pull out the treasured comb from under his pillow, stroke it with tearful eyes, whispering her name with longing, Jia. His best friend, 12-year-old Juzi, seeing his gloom, sighed along with him. It's a pity you can't cook. Whenever my dad upsets my mom, he makes food to apologize. The offhand comment hit Mu Linghao like lightning. His eyes brightened. Before dawn the next day, Mu Linghao stood stiffly in the kitchen, bewildered, staring around as though in enemy territory. With trembling hands, he lit the stove. The firelight flickered on his nervous face. He began his clumsy attempt at preparing food. His knife skills were so poor that he nearly cut his fingers multiple times. Still, he refused to give up, proceeding with even greater caution. When the water finally boiled, he prepared to drop noodles into the pot. But in the process, his fingers accidentally plunged into the scalding water. A searing, soul-tearing pain shot through him. He yelped in agony, yanking his hand back. A large blister instantly rose on his finger. He gritted his teeth against the pain, hastily wrapping it with a scrap of cloth. At that moment, he realized with horror that the fire had grown too fierce. The pot had boiled dry, black smoke billowed upward. In panic, he tried to put out the fire, but knocked over a jar of condiments. It shattered, scattering spices everywhere. The flame spread swiftly like a prairie fire. Terrified out of his wits, Mu Linghao bolted from the kitchen, screaming Wei Nyang's name. Wei Nyang rushed in at the sound, and her face turned pale at the sight of fire leaping in the kitchen. Without hesitation, she seized a water bucket, dashed in, and doused the flames. When the fire was finally out, the kitchen was a wreck. Wei Nyang looked at Mu Linghao's scalded hand and the chaotic mess around them. Pity and helplessness surged in her heart. She gently took his injured hand, carefully examining it, her eyes filled with deep concern. "You fool, how could you be so careless?" she scolded softly. But her tone was tender, full of affection. The hard wall she had built up in her heart crumbled in that instant. Ashamed, Mu Linghao lowered his head, mumbling like a chastened child, "Jia. I just wanted to do something for you." His voice grew smaller and smaller until it nearly faded away. Seeing him like this, all of Wei Nyang's reproach melted away. She stroked his head gently and said softly, "Silly boy, your heart is enough. If you really want to learn, I'll teach you slowly." Mu Linghao lifted his gaze, tears sparkling with relief. His panic and guilt finally eased. Gripping her hand tightly, his voice choked, "Jia, you're not angry with me anymore?" Aye. Wei Nyang patted his head, smiling with a sigh. "Between you and me, what need is there for thanks?" She began to clean up the mess with practiced ease. Mu Linghao stood aside, watching her busy figure, and made a silent vow. From now on, he would work harder. Never again would he let Wei Nyang worry over him. From then on, Mu Linghao stopped fooling around with the village boys. He learned to cook, to carry water, chop firewood, and feed the pigs. He wanted not only to be Wei Nyang's helper but her pillar of support. Their bond grew ever closer, like true family, inseparable from that point on. Dappled sunlight danced across the village, time flowing quietly through this ancient land, as calm and unhurried as a trickling stream. It was the season of harvest. Colorful ribbons fluttered through the village, voices surged like tides, the air was filled with music and festivity everywhere, brimming with the joy of abundance. Mu Linghao and Wei Yang strolled along the village paths, their smiles radiant as they wove through the crowd. Their laughter was as warm as sunlight, as if in this moment the whole world's warmth gathered in their presence. Amid the cheerful noise of celebration, Mu Linghao was drawn to the various performances and games. Brimming with eagerness, he resolved to win a special gift for Wei Yang. Though he met with repeated setbacks, he only grew more determined. At last, after much effort, he managed to win a small but precious gift. Holding it carefully in both hands, he offered it to Wei Yang, his eyes shimmering with joy and anticipation. Wei Yang accepted it with a gentle smile. "Ah how, you're so thoughtful. I truly like this gift." Her praise made Mu Linghao's cheeks flush red at once. But in the midst of this harmony and happiness, a pair of eyes watched them with jealousy. It was Qiao Hong, another village beauty. She had long cherished feelings for Mu Linghao, yet his childlike mind left her unable to confess. A slight glimmer flickered in her gaze as she slipped a bit of silver into her hand and beckoned the village rascal, Zhuzi. "Zhuzi, go summon Mu Linghao. This silver will be your reward," she whispered, her voice as soft as night wind brushing bamboo leaves. Zhuzi's eyes lit up. He seized the silver and dashed away. Soon he returned, tugging Mu Linghao behind him. "Mu Linghao, Sister Qiao Hong calls for you." With that, Zhuzi ran off again like the wind, leaving dust swirling. Mu Linghao stared at Qiao Hong, confusion in his eyes. "Who are you? Why are you looking for me?" he asked, tilting his head in puzzlement. Qiao Hong smiled faintly. Yet when she saw that he still did not recognize her, she sighed inwardly. So he really is a fool. Her lips curled in disdain. The affection in her heart dispersed like smoke. Rolling her eyes, she sneered, "A fool is a fool. Even with a face as fair as jade, it's all wasted." Though his mind was childlike, Mu Linghao could understand insult well enough. His cheeks puffed with anger as he glared at her. "Who are you calling a fool?" His eyes, already bright as starlight, shone even more brilliantly as he widened them so dazzling that Qiao Hong was momentarily entranced. Composing herself, she pasted on a smile, plucked a stalk of foxtail grass, and reached forward to tease him. "Oh? Even a fool knows how to get angry?" Just as the foxtail was about to brush against his jade-like cheek, Mu Linghao recoiled as if from a ghost. His gaze darted past Qiao Hong, sparkling with excitement. He waved his arms and cried out, "Sister, I'm here." Qiao Hong's face darkened, jealousy surging through her chest. She spread her arms wide, blocking him. "What are you shouting for? Call again, and today you won't be going anywhere." Mu Linghao was unused to such threats. His anger flared. "Wicked woman! Are you trying to kidnap children? I won't pay you any mind. I'm going to my sister." With a twist of his waist, he slipped beneath her arms and bolted toward Wei Yang. But Qiao Hong was unwilling to let him escape. She grabbed his waist, hooked her foot, and tripped him to the ground. "Ah!" Mu Linghao yelped, flailing as he accidentally clutched Qiao Hong. Both of them tumbled down the slope, crying out in alarm. What happened? Who's rolling down the hill? The commotion drew the villagers. From the slope's crest they saw Mu Linghao sprawled atop Qiao Hong. "Little sister." Qiao Hong's elder brother, Danyou, rushed down and pulled them up. Qiao Hong, dizzy from the fall, staggered to her feet, clutching Mu Linghao's arm. "Ryup." His sleeve tore halfway off, exposing a pale, smooth arm. The villagers on the slope froze, then erupted in loud laughter. "You." Mu Linghao's eyes reddened, glaring at Qiao Hong, on the verge of tears. "Wei Yang." At that moment, she arrived in haste. She hurried down, drew a garment from her basket, and draped it over him. Seeing his kin, Mu Linghao's pale lips trembled. He collapsed against her shoulder, sobbing aloud. "Sister, they're all bad people. I want to go home, I want to go home." The villagers burst into laughter once more. Danyou stepped forward, waving them off. Go, find your fun elsewhere. What's there to laugh at here?" The villagers, simple and honest folk, dispersed at his words, unwilling to continue gawking. Wang Yang gently pushed Mu Linghao upright, then walked a few paces toward Dinyo, bowing slightly. Thank you, Brother Dinyo, for easing the situation. Today's matter. She trailed off with a sigh, not knowing what else to say. Dinyo's face flushed red, a faint fragrance reaching his nose, making him too embarrassed to meet her eyes. Awkwardly, he cupped his fists. Sister Wang Yang, think nothing of it. Best take Brother Hao home and change his clothes. But Mu Linghao, still brimming with indignation, disliked his sister speaking with other men, despised even more that another man might covet her. Sister, let's go. I want to go home. I'm hungry. Wang Yang stumbled as he tugged her. All right, don't pull. She turned, intending to offer Dinyo another farewell, but Mu Linghao darted in front of her, blocking her gaze. From behind, he pushed her forward urgently. Hurry, hurry. His eyes shot Dinyo a sharp, cutting glare. That piercing look chilled Dinyo to the bone. He instinctively stepped back, inwardly startled. How could a fool's eyes be so fierce? With Mu Linghao urging her along, Wang Yang had no choice but to leave quickly. She nevertheless turned back with an apologetic smile, nodding to Dinyo in thanks and farewell. The pair gradually disappeared into the distance, while Dinyo remained rooted to the spot, watching their retreating figures in a daze. Xiao Hong, still dirty and disheveled from the fall, glared hatefully at their backs, her heart seething. Back home, Wang Yang soothed Mu Linghao's agitation. She knew the incident had been a real fright for him. Gently patting his back, she spoke soft words of comfort. Little by little, he calmed down. Yet still he clung tightly to her hand, as though afraid she might vanish at any moment. A tender warmth rose in Wang Yang's heart. She understood that despite his childlike nature, his heart was exceedingly sensitive and fragile. She stroked his hair gently, whispering, "Don't be afraid. Sister will always stay by your side." Once she coaxed him into changing his torn clothes, Wang Yang busied herself with preparing supper. Mu Linghao sat by the hearth, chin in hands, quietly watching her. The firelight reflected on her face, soft and beautiful. His earlier unease melted away, replaced by a deep, unshakable attachment to her.